I'm Tim, he's Steve, and this is For the Love of MotoGP. So, hi there guys, this is a bit of a different show for us. Steve and I normally have a very casual feel, and I think the casual feel is going to drop in quite quickly into this show. But this show today is designed for people who have literally no idea what the fuck MotoGP racing is. There it is, I've already sworn we're into the show. So I think, Steve, we're just going to dive into this, yeah? And we'll just go through what MotoGP is. We'll run through the MotoGP teams. We'll run through the machinery. We'll run through the riders. We'll run through what a race weekend looks like. We'll run through the championships. And then we'll go through the tracks. And maybe if we've got time, we'll go through some FAQs, some frequently asked questions about MotoGP. And then maybe cover a few more resources at the end as well. We've got a big day ahead of us, I think, Steve.
This is going to be a long show, mate. I'm quite looking forward to it. Like you say, it's a show designed for people who haven't really watched MotoGP before. If you just flick the racing on and you're sat there going, what the hell is happening here? Here's your reference. Come to us and we will give you our best explanation.
Exactly. So shall we dive straight into it?
Let's go for it.
Good stuff. So MotoGP is the pinnacle of motorcycle racing. It is the Formula One of motorcycle racing. The fastest guys on the fastest bikes are competing, and they're competing to become the MotoGP world champion. They collect points from each race, depending on their finishing position, much like every other racing series, but the points do differ across racing series. In MotoGP, it's 25 points for the win, it's 25 for second, it's 16 for third, 13 for fourth, 11 for fifth, 10 for sixth, and then we drop a point all the way down to 15th place who score a single point. And the rider that collects the most is the world champion. 11 teams compete over 19 races in 2021. Should have been 21 races, but it's a weird year. And each team will field 2 riders, Steve.
They certainly shall. Unless you're Aprilia, and then sometimes you decide to chuck in an extra one because you don't really know what's happening yet.
Yes, there are certain teams. So there are 6 manufacturers on the grid, and in general, each manufacturer will have its factory team plus 1 satellite team. However, as Steve has just alluded to, there are exceptions. So satellite teams are essentially I kind of struggle with how to explain a satellite team, Steve.
I think the best way to describe it is each manufacturer has a first team, which is your factory-backed first team. So the 2 best riders they can get will go into that factory. They then have a secondary team.
And the first team will be the best funded team as well.
Yes. They then have a secondary team, which is the same machines, but generally a year or 2 older. They're generally handed down 1 year to the next, and they will shoot down.
Although even that's not really the case in the last few years, is it? Is they will have current year machinery, the satellite teams. It's only really been the last few years that's been the case. But certainly, probably pre-2018, it was very common for satellite teams to be on 1 year, maybe even 2-year-old machinery. However, in the 2020-2021 era, it's much more common to see a satellite team on current year machinery, just for the data more than anything.
Oh, yes. These secondary satellite teams, if you will, they will have their own sponsorship. They will not have quite the backing of the full factory teams. And they will get, again, the best riders they can to ride these machines to the best of their ability. And the 4 bikes at the end of the year, or throughout the year, can generally combine data gathered from each race, each session that these bikes are on track, and all 4 riders will have access to this data.
Yeah, and it's sort of assumed as well, isn't it, that if you are in a factory team, you will get the upgrades first. You will get the upgrades to your chassis, to your engine, to your brake system, your suspension system, whatever it is. You will get the upgrades first. when we know they work, those upgrades 2 or 3 rounds later will be passed down to the satellite team. But being in that factory team is where you want to be. There's more money involved. You're going to earn more. You've got a better chance of winning. You'll have better machinery. And you've got a larger team around you. So you've got a bigger crew around you to deal with everything.
Yes, absolutely. Almost like a 2-tier thing. Pyramid system, if you will.
Yeah.
Factory at the top, pinnacle, satellite team, secondary, just a step underneath.
Yes, exactly. And there are examples throughout MotoGP's history where there would have been more than the 2 tiers, wouldn't there? There would have been factory, there'd have been satellite, then we're talking about independent CRT squads and stuff and so on and so forth. Yep. But that's kind of an interesting history that's not relevant to modern MotoGP.
No.
As Steve has mentioned, though, there are a couple of exceptions to the satellite rules. Suzuki and Aprilia both being... Suzuki being a full factory team do not have a satellite team under them as of yet, but it's likely they'll have one in the future. We also have Aprilia, who are in this weird grey area because they're not really a full factory team because they are part of the Gresini squad. The Gresini team should normally and has always been a satellite team in its history. But because Aprilia don't have a factory team and are working with Gresini, they're sort of this strange pseudo-factory team, and it's a bit weird, and no one really knows what's going on with it, but it's unusual, and it's only going to be the next year or two, and then it will be changing. There will be a full factory Aprilia, but for this year, if you're watching MotoGP for the first time, you'll see the Aprilia Gresini team, and it is a bit strange to wrap your head around, but don't worry about it too much.
No, just think of them as Aprilia.
Yeah, that's kind of the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, that's generally what I do. I try not to think about the weird mismatch, which is Aprilia. Otherwise, I just go cross-eyed.
Yep, that's fair enough. Right. So should we run through the team, Steve? And so everyone's got a basic idea of what we're talking about. We're going to try and make this as accessible as possible for you guys. I guess you can't tell us in real time whether we're fucking up and whether we're getting it wrong, but please do. If you listen to this show and you haven't got a bloody clue what we're talking about by the time we get to the end, please get in touch with us and let us know where we fucked up and where we could have made this better. And we will go back and we will re-record and we will re-release, because I'd really like this to be a great show. Yeah,
absolutely. I'd like it to be a good reference for anyone who comes to MotoGP and thinks, right, this is for me, it's a sport I can get behind. And you hear about this show and you want to check out what some of the more detailed bits and just get some information on what MotoGP is. We'd really like this to be the show for you to come to and get your references from. So, like Tim says, let us know.
Yeah, exactly that. So let's run through the team, Steve. And we'll start off with the Honda team, shall we? So we have the Honda factory team, sponsored by Repsol, the petrochemical manufacturer. Shitload of money, the most successful team that has ever existed in MotoGP.
Absolutely.
Repsol obviously being a Spanish sponsor, and Honda being the Japanese manufacturer there. Repsol Honda have one satellite team, which is the LCR Honda squad. That's Lucio Cecchinello Racing Honda. Lucio Cecchinello is a ex-rider himself. Did he ride in the 500 class, in the Premier class, or was he a smaller class racer?
I believe, off the top of my head, he was a 250 racer.
Okay, so he was in the smaller classes. I wasn't sure he'd ever got to the Premier class either, but maybe he did, maybe we don't know. But the fact is, he is a rider come manager. He gave up. And he also actually, did he win a race while managing his own team, for his own team? I
believe he did,
in 125s, I believe, right?
Yeah, something along that line. Yeah, he was one of the very few people to receive that accolade, which is a bit of a brag for him.
Yeah, quite. It is quite the brag, because I think it's quite an egotistical move to own a team and ride for the team. But when you can own a team, ride for the team, and win for the team, all of a sudden, not quite so egotistical and quite baller, I think.
Yeah. As soon as you come back in, holding that first place trophy, you can sit down and everyone else is just going to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly that. But yeah, you'll see the Honda squad and you'll see the Repsol Honda team quite a lot. They're the orange bike with Repsol written down the side. You will often see them on the TV coverage. Next up, we have the Monster Yamaha team. Monster, the American energy drink company. Yamaha, the Japanese motorcycle manufacturer.
Yes.
Super successful in the past couple of decades, mainly thanks to two guys being
pretty much down to their sole exploits on track.
Exactly.
I think if you look further back, you're starting to get away from the Monster Yamaha days.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, it was most of the Monster. In fact, I'm not sure Monster Yamaha have won a championship, have they? But Yamaha, as a factory outfit, have won many championships with the one guy we've all heard of, Valentino Rossi, and almost the guy who took over from him in Jorge Lorenzo.
Yes.
The Monster Yamaha squad have the Sepang Racing Team Yamaha, sponsored by Petronas, as their satellite squad. And this is almost a Malaysian government-backed team, isn't it? That the Sepang Racing Team, Petronas are a Malaysian government-owned company. Kind of everything about that team is just money from the Malaysian government. And I tell you what, they show what you can do when you put money into MotoGP.
They certainly do. Although they are, if you will, the secondary team, the satellite team, their results would certainly have you think otherwise.
Yes, last year the Monster Yamaha team won 1 race. The Sepang Racing Team won 6. That's out of a 14 race season. So that kind of shows you what... and it's not even just the money, is it? There's certainly more than that, but it certainly shows you that you don't need to be a factory team to be successful in this current era in MotoGP.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So the next squad we have is the Red Bull KTM team. Red Bull, the Austrian energy drink company, and KTM, the Austrian motorcycle manufacturer.
Nice coincidence there.
Yeah, happy days. And they've got a shit ton of money, as we've been seeing. And they've only been on the grid, Steve, for shit. I really should have looked this up before we started recording, shouldn't I? 2016 was their first year?
Yeah, it's 4 years they've been on the grid.
So it'll be 5 years. Is 2021 their 5th year?
Yes.
There we go. See, I didn't even need to try and fill for time there, Steve, because you actually knew. And that upsets me that I didn't have the faith in you just to ask, and I apologise for that.
I believe it is right. Again, listeners, if we're wrong, let us know.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're new to the sport, then maybe Google it and let us know.
Yeah. Just don't make us look bad.
And Red Bull have had... Oh, the Red Bull KTM squad, they had a couple of years in the doldrums, a year of just scoring points every now and again, but had their breakout year last year, didn't they?
They did. Last year was an awesome year for them.
Exactly.
Really, really good.
The KTM as a manufacturer scored 3 wins last year. One of those wins came from their factory squad. The other 2 wins came from the Tech 3 KTM satellite team. So again, proving actually you don't need to be on the factory team to be scoring the most wins here.
No, it's becoming, in recent years, it's becoming a bit of a trait that the satellite team are almost overtaking the factory team in wins and results in certain areas. So which begs the sort of question, which bike do you want to be on? Where do you want to be? Which garage?
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't always have to set your ambitions to be in a factory team to get the better results.
Yeah, that's certainly true.
But Red Bull KTM and Tech 3 KTM are definitely coming into their own recently, and they are a team to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And Tech 3 have been hyper successful throughout their history, and most of that history was with the Yamaha. They were the Yamaha satellite team. So although it's the Sepang Racing Team now, as the Yamaha satellite, Tech 3 were, up until 2019, the Yamaha satellite team, and they were successful. They were scoring podiums. They were never scoring race wins, though. Their race wins only came after their swaps to KTM.
Yeah, that is a classic example of like first place and second place of the satellite team being the lesser of the two, if you will. always having good results, but just edging that little bit behind the factory team.
It's very true, actually. That's a really good point. And if you look through the history of Yamaha and Tech 3, that was the perfect example of what a factory and a satellite team had been, in that the satellite team would get year-old machinery, they'd score good results, they'd have good riders, but then the factory team would take those good riders, put them on the factory bike, and then give the satellite team year-old machinery again.
Exactly. That is, perfect example of how things were 5 years ago.
Yep. And as we saw with Tech 3, it became part of the MotoGP and what MotoGP has become. If you weren't being looked after as a satellite team, if you weren't being looked after by your factory, if you weren't being given good machinery, you weren't going to win. Tech 3 bailed on Yamaha, a team that would, or a factory that were giving them podiums and pole positions, but never race wins. But they bailed on them because they were only a year-old machinery. And KTM, who at the time were a manufacturer that wasn't even scoring top 10s regularly, but promised them factory-backed, current year, full-spec machinery, KTM and Tech 3 jumped to that opportunity. Let's take the better bikes and see where it takes us. And the potential has worked for them. It's really, really worked for them.
Yeah, it's a gamble that has definitely gone in their favour.
That's it. So the next one we talk about, Steve, here, this is where we get into the weird, you don't just have one satellite team, what's happening here? So we have the Ducati racing team. Ducati, who have, throughout their history, been weirdly sponsored by Philip Morris, the tobacco company, under many different guises, but never really allowed to admit that's who they're sponsored by. And yet, we all do their job for them, because I've just done it and told you that's who they're sponsored by. So it works. However, they're the Big Red Bikes, Italian team, and they have won one championship in their history, and that was under Casey Stoner. Ducati are a weird team. It'll take you maybe an entire season to wrap your head around whether you like them or whether you hate them. I think that's...
I still get confused about them now.
Yeah, I change maybe daily. Some days I love them. Other days I'm like, you fucking pricks.
They are the team that have been on the grid for so long, had so little results, but have never, ever stopped pushing.
Well, they've been on the grid for 18 years now?
Something along that line, yeah. They've been there for a long time.
And they've won one championship in that time.
Yeah, they are notorious for making ultra fast bikes in a straight line.
Yeah.
Insanely quick. If you want to look back and look it up on YouTube, there is some prime examples of these bikes absolutely flying past the competition down the back straights on the like Mugello. Look it up at Mugello. It's insane.
Yeah.
But never really being able to do anything else until the last few years, where they become a bit more competitive.
Because the problem was they couldn't corner, could they? They had amazing straight line speed, but they could not make the bikes turn. They would gain, say they somewhere like Mugello, they might gain half a second a lap down the straight, and yet throughout the rest of the corners around the lap, they're losing a second and a half.
The terms point and squirt became synonymous with the Ducati, where you would get to the corner, you would literally stop the bike, turn it, and just go again. Whereas other machines made their name, like the Yamaha, for instance, through smooth, rapid corner speed, where you weren't quite as quick down the straights, but you were faster through the corners. You could hold your speed, and it really showed the difference between the two bikes. Ducati were just raw power, straight line speed, and just go for it. It was a spectacle to watch.
Yeah, certainly.
It really is. And I wouldn't want to ride the thing, not at that speed.
I mean, to put it on the record here, I wouldn't want to ride any of these MotoGP bikes at racing speed or anywhere near flat out. I would no chance would you get me. If you said to me today, Tim, do you want to take this MotoGP bike round this track? Obviously, I would say yes. If you were to say to me, Tim, do you want to ride this MotoGP bike as fast as you possibly can round this track? I would say no.
Not a hope, sunshine.
Because it would get to corner 1 and I'd be in the gravel trap straight away.
Oh, absolutely. So would 99.9999% of the rest of the population.
Exactly. So Ducati have this weird arrangement where they actually have 2 satellite teams. They have the Pramac Ducati squad, which is going to be the Ducati team that is on current year machinery. So kind of it's a weird one, isn't it? Say Ducati are level 1 Ducati team. Pramac are the level 1.5 Ducati team. They're not quite as supported as the factory squad, obviously, but they are more supported than the level 2 Ducati satellite team in Avintia. However, we're not really sure what Avintia are called. Are they called Avintia? Are they called Esponsorama? One of the bikes is actually marked up as VR46. So wrap your head around it, guys. I have been recording a MotoGP podcast for at least 3 years. I've been a fan of MotoGP for now nearly a decade, and I still cannot work out what the fuck is going on with this team.
It's a bit bizarre. When you look at it, they're the exception to the rule. They are the 3-tier team.
Yes.
And it's the Avintia Esponsorama bit that screw everyone up, because all of a sudden it's a mismatch, an amalgamation of 3 different sponsors, who's title, who's this. And then we get to 2021 and we've got the VR46 Ducati of Luca Marini in the mix, which gives it a different livery to the other Avintia bike, which adds another element of confusion. And it's just all over the gaff.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, on that note, Steve, quickly, can you hear how much rain is hitting my windows right now?
I can. I thought it was your mic rubbing against your chest.
No, it's not my mic at all. It's the rain, so I hope it doesn't spoil our sound. We're just going to have to roll with it because I literally cannot change the weather. But you were just...
If you could, we would not be recording this.
Yeah, quite. But you and I would be fucking minted, mate, and we wouldn't be worrying about this.
No.
However, discussing teams with different liveries, we will also see the LCR Honda team has got 2 different liveries on their satellite bikes. They have got the livery that looks like a Colgate toothpaste tube, and they've also got the Idemitsu livery. So the 2 bikes in that team do not look the same at all, and you will notice the same thing with the Avintia Esponsorama VR46 Ducati satellite team. Is the 2 bikes on that do not look similar at all.
No, this all comes down to sponsorship, and like the LCR guys are a perfect example. One rider, one machine is sponsored by Castrol predominantly, and the other one is sponsored by
Givy, depending on the
Givy, depending on which one you think is title. And the other rider, Taka Nakagami's bike, is sponsored by Idemitsu. Idemitsu. Again, they come with their own liveries, and part of the package deal is that is the livery that you ride.
Yes.
So you get this odd situation where you look like you've got 2 different teams in one garage, but they're not. They are essentially the same team. It's just the riders have different sponsors.
It just depends where the money is coming from.
Yeah, and the same thing happens at the Avintia Esponsorama and the VR46 Ducati. It's the same team. They're just wearing different colours because their money comes from different places.
Exactly. And that brings us to our last 2 teams who do not have satellite squads. We have the Suzuki X-Star team, which is a Suzuki squad, full factory team, but it's just the 2 bikes. There's no satellite squads for this year, at least. There's talk of them in the future, but this year it will just be the 2 Suzukis on the grid. That is that.
That is it. Nice and simple, easy.
Exactly. And then we have the Aprilia Racing Gresini team. As we've previously mentioned, they're in this weird amalgamation where they're not really a full factory team. They're not really just a satellite team. They're somewhere in the middle, and no one really knows. Although if one of them does... There's this weird thing, actually. We haven't written this in the notes, Steve. But when it comes to podiums at the end of the race, standard podium is if you finish 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, you stand on the podium. Happy days.
Yes.
But also, if you finish as the top satellite or independent rider, and it's not in one of those 1, 2, 3 spots. So if you finish 4th on a satellite bike, you also get to go into Parc Ferme.
Yes.
And within Parc Ferme, if an Aprilia factory but sort of Gresini satellite bike finishes fourth, they do get to go into Parc Ferme because they are technically an independent team, even though they're factory backed by Aprilia, a bit like the Avintia Responsorama VR46 Ducati thing. Wrap your fucking head around it, because I can't.
Yeah, I think that is a leftover terminology or point from the CRT days, which are now gone, where CRT bikes were brought in when MotoGP was having a very doldrum time.
I think this is actually, no, it's not quite that, is it? That was the CRT Championship. The Independent Championship became a different thing from that. We won't dive into the CRT Championship because it's not relevant to now. But there is... talking about the Independent Team Championship is a good point, because although it's not really spoken about very much, it is something that's worth knowing, because you will see them in Parc Ferme. You will see the Independent Team Championship spoken about sometimes, and it is sort of a tier 2 championship, I suppose, within the normal MotoGP championship, where the top finishing independent or satellite team, the kind of name's interchangeable, will gather points, and there will be an independent championship team. There'll be an independent championship rider every year, but it's one of those things that we kind of... It's only really talked about if you're a big fan of MotoGP. It's not talked about to the casual fan. It's not really talked about on the broadcast. It's talked about if you dive into it quite deeply, but it's not talked about it in the general sense, I don't think.
No. It's a very low-key championship, and even with TV coverage, it doesn't always get covered in Parc Ferme.
No, it doesn't. And actually, you don't often see people bragging about Independent Team Championship. You don't see teams bragging about being the independent champions. I think if I was a rider, which clearly I'm fucking not, but if I was a rider, I also wouldn't be bragging about it, because that's not the point. The point of getting to MotoGP isn't to become the independent team rider. It's to become the MotoGP World Champion.
Exactly. It's almost celebrating the first loser, if you will. And just but it is there to give everyone else just something to aim for. It's just not an accolade that anyone really celebrates.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
So if you see a fourth person stood at the back of the Parc Ferme jumping around like an idiot, that's him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's pretty easy to tell. Although in the last year or two, that's not been... We haven't seen so much of that, because quite often there has been a satellite bike legitimately on the podium.
Yeah, exactly. So that takes away that fourth spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Parc Ferme, just because they've come on so strong and are now challenging more often than the factory boys.
Yep, that's exactly it. So the bikes, Steve, the bikes they ride in the MotoGP World Championship, the bikes are fully prototype machines. They're made only for MotoGP racing. You cannot, in theory, go out and buy one of these bikes. These bikes cannot be ridden on the road. They are 100% racing machines.
They are. Other racing series around the world, you could go out, let's use World Superbike as an example. You could roll up to a dealership, buy the latest racing replica bike, and actually purchase a package to convert that to a race spec bike. These you cannot. They are full bore prototypes. You could lease them for a lot of money.
But you can only, in theory, lease them if you've got a connection. Like, you and I could not go and lease one of these bikes. You and I have no chance of going and riding one of these machines.
Oh, absolutely not at all. You need to have a connection for a racing team in MotoGP. There's no other way of going about it. We could not ring up Yamaha tomorrow and say, right, I want an M1 Yamaha. How much is it going to cost me? You're just going to get laughed at. It's not going to happen. Whereas you could go out and buy your latest V4 Ducati from a dealership, and you could spec that out to the same spec as your domestic series racing. Yeah,
that's exactly it. So manufacturers build the engine, they build the gearbox, they build the chassis for their bikes. They get their brakes from Brembo, and their suspension also comes from outside companies. Most teams will use Olin suspension, but the KTM squads will use WP suspension. Now, WP is essentially KTM. It's a KTM-owned company, isn't it? But could all of the other manufacturers... I don't know this, but could the other manufacturers, Steve, go and make their own brakes or make their own suspension? And is this the fact they buy it in? Is it just cost-saving, or is it within the rules?
I believe it is in the rules to keep it all under one curtain.
Okay.
Much like the tires.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could go off and make your own brand, if you will. Because like we see, let's take Öhlins for example, the suspension guys, they provide technicians
Yes.
to come in as well. So there's a lot of stuff that comes with it. But I do not believe, at the top of my head, you can actually go out and develop your own suspension or your own components to strap onto the bike.
So have KTM got some weird thing going on, but because WP is owned by KTM, they can still manufacture their suspension, even though it's a weird one.
I believe that is correct.
Yeah, okay,
I
fair
believe
enough.
that is correct.
And that's a good point. I hadn't written anything about the tyres down for these notes, Steve, and you've just reminded me. The tyres are spec tyres, and they are given to the grid by Michelin. In previous eras, there has been a tyre war in MotoGP, much like there's been a tyre war in Formula 1 and in other racing series, in which we had a Michelin Bridgestone tyre war for a long time. But as that petered out in the late noughties, Bridgestone became the de facto, the only tyre manufacturer. And then in the late 2010s, Michelin took over as the only tyre manufacturer. So that is a level playing field on the tyres.
Yeah, they're all on the same rubber.
Also, do the teams develop their own exhausts, Steve, or do we see them buying their exhausts in? I know we see some squads with, here we go, I can never say this fucking exhaust company's name. Akrapovic, is it?
I always say Akrapovic, but I think it could be
Akrapovic.
Akrapovic.
Okay, either or, but you know who I mean. We see those stickers on the bikes, but is that actually who is making the exhaust? Because we hear teams of their team have got a Slash exhaust this week. They've changed their exhaust, so I don't know who manufactures the exhaust here. I tried to Google it, and I'll be honest, Steve, we had a long show ahead of us, so I didn't really have enough time to Google every single question I had for this show.
Right, off the top of my head, I'll use Suzuki as the example. Their exhausts are provided by Akrapovic.
Okay.
They have that beautiful, double flanked slash cut, amazing exhaust. The Yamaha also have Akrapovic exhausts. They have different options. I'm not 100% sure about Honda. I believe it is custom made in-house by Honda. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Because they have and we've seen it in the past, a weird spiral set up under the seat to get the right length of the exhaust, and then one shorter one coming out the other side. I cannot remember if that is Akrapovic off the top of my head or not.
I don't think the Honda one is. I've never seen an Akrapovic sticker on Honda that stood out, whereas with the other manufacturers, I definitely have seen that.
Yeah, I believe the Honda... and I do believe the Aprilia are in-house.
Okay, cool. So it looks like then, in theory, if we are correct here, Steve, they can do it in-house if they want, or they can work with an outside manufacturer. But please, if you're listening, guys, do not take our word for that 100%. If this comes up in a pub quiz, or if it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, do not just answer that as your £1 million question, because Steve and I... You've got to this point in the show here. I'm quite happy to admit now, 32 minutes in or whatever it is, that Steve and I really don't know what we're talking about that much. We are avid fans of MotoGP. We love the sport and we really do try and pay attention. But as with all people who are not real proper professionals, we don't have 100% of our time to devote to this, so we do get things wrong occasionally. We're very happy to admit when we're wrong, so if we are wrong on this, please let us know. Email us, let us know. Get to the end of the show, you'll hear the email address and stuff, or it's just in the show notes. You can just find it in there. That might make your life easier. But we are just massive fans, and I just get drunk a lot while we're recording, so you'll probably notice that as the show goes on. The bikes, Steve, do have the electronics packages as well. Like there is launch control, there's traction control. There's a lot of things that are controlled by computers, because if you're riding a bike that weighs less than 300 kilos but puts out more than 300 horsepower, you need electronics, because otherwise you're going to end up in the gravel a lot.
Oh, yes. The electronics on these bikes are absolutely insane. They have all sorts. I don't know even where to begin on the electronics.
I think it's too much to go into right now, Steve, because I actually don't know. I don't understand the electronics package in a basic car that I could go out and buy brand new for 12 grand today, let alone the electronics in £1 million motorcycle.
Yeah, I think probably the best way to describe the electronics in a MotoGP bike is basically just a piece of hardware that is infinitely mappable to the spec of what the rider needs.
Yeah, exactly. And but even that was certainly true 5 years ago. But because that became a very expensive part of MotoGP, the electronics package is now very controlled. But it's traction control, it's launch control, it's anti-wheelie, it's all the stuff to stop you crashing, basically, is what the electronics package is. And it's all made and controlled all made by Magneti Marelli. Magneti Marelli were very famous in the 80s and 90s for creating the top-end Formula One electronics.
Yes.
They now create the electronics packages for all of MotoGP, but the electronics package is fully controlled by Dorna and by the FIM. So Dorna is the rights owner for MotoGP, and FIM is the international body that governs the sport. These guys have full control over what is going on in those electronics, and it's to stop a spending war within the teams. It's to stop teams like Honda, who have the most money, arguably, spending the most money to make their electronics package work, because that is where you find your lap time. If you could have unlimited money to spend, in Honda's case, if they could drop another 150 million a year on electronics, they would get a second a lap every single lap at every single track, and that's the championship done by day one. We all know it will be done, and that's why the electronic package was brought in. The controlled Magneti Marelli electronics package was brought in to control spending and make sure the sport was more exciting for us all.
Exactly. On one blanket piece of tech that is covered on all bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Fair and even.
Yeah, that's it. Tyres, electronics. They're the two.
Yes.
And not even the fuel allowance, is it? No, wait. All bikes are governed by the same amount of fuel now, aren't they?
Yes. They can only run a certain amount of litres per race.
21 litres? I'm saying that with the voice of a man who doesn't actually know what he's saying. 21?
I believe it's 21 litres. They changed it regularly over a period of time where it changed almost every season.
Yeah, and when we had the CRT rules, the CRT bikes could run 24 litres, everyone else could only run 21, but I think it's 21 now, but again, I could be wrong.
I believe it's 21 litres.
Okay, so the first time we get to see these bikes, Steve, properly see them is during pre-season testing. We do see them briefly in like the pre-season launch where we see the liveries and things. But pre-season testing is when we really see them go around the tracks in anger, because that's when the bikes are out being tested properly in their race spec for the first time. And normally pre-season testing is around 15 days. It normally starts in February. They go to a few tracks and then they hit Qatar for the opening round of the year. This year it's a bit different, and we're in I'm going to call this COVID year 2. COVID harder.
COVID harder, that's brilliant.
And this year we're only having a few days of testing, and that starts from the 6th of March. I think we're getting 4 or 5 days, aren't we? It's not a lot of testing this year.
It's the 6th to the 12th of March.
But isn't there a day off there's some days off in between, is there not?
No, according to the calendar, it's one solid block.
Okay, but part of that is the rookie test. The rookies get 2 days, that the rest of the grid aren't there, so on and so forth. So it's not 6 days of testing for all of the guys, but for some of them it might be.
No, the days that MotoGP have booked for testing are the 6th to the 12th. They then break it down into sections for different riders throughout those days. So they do get like 2 days, a day off, 2 days, et cetera, depending on who you are. But essentially, they have 6 days of testing booked.
That's exactly it. And as you've mentioned the riders, Steve, let's dive in to the riders that are going to be competing in the 2021 World Championship, shall we?
Let's go for it.
So we'll run through them then in their 2020 championship positions. We have got some rookies in, which we will discuss at the end of the list. But this so far will be the 2020 championship finishing positions. So finishing first last year as the MotoGP world champion was one Johan Mir. Johan Mir rides for Suzuki. So he's on a Suzuki machine, riding for Team Suzuki. He's a Spanish chap, finished with 171 points, and he remains with Suzuki for 2021.
Certainly correct.
Then behind him finished Franco Morbidelli. Franco Morbidelli finished second place last year. He's on a Yamaha machine, but that's for the SRT Yamaha squad. He's an Italian chap, very, very good friends with one Valentino Rossi. He finished the championship on 158 points, and he remains with the same team for 2021.
Certainly does.
Alex Rins finished third last year. Alex Rins Suzuki, once again, for Team Suzuki. He's a Spanish chap once more. You'll see a lot of Spanish and Italians in this grid, guys. There's a lot of them, and that's just where the talent comes from at the moment. But he finished third, and he remains with Suzuki for the following year. We then move to... We actually skip out the fellow who finished fourth because he's not on the grid next year. But that was Andrea Dovizioso. Dovi rode for Ducati for the Ducati factory squad. There was a lot of arguments, a lot of fallouts, but he's no longer riding on the grid due to those fallouts.
All right, he is off a retirement from a MotoGP.
Yes, exactly. Next, then, we have one Pol Espargaro. Pol Espargaro rides the KTM for the factory team in 2020. He finished fifth overall, and it was an absolutely astounding finish for the KTM squad. They did not expect to be finishing anywhere near this point last year. He's not the KTM rider that won a race. We've discussed this earlier. Yet he is the highest finishing KTM, the most consistent of the KTMs. And thanks to his consistency, thanks to what he did, he will be moving next year to the full factory Repsol Honda squad from KTM. So he goes from the guys that have been on the grid for 4 or 5 years to the winningest factory in MotoGP. So he's had quite the promotion.
Just a bit. Lucky bugger.
Yeah. I mean, he's worked for it, to be fair.
he did put a good slog in. Bless him. And yeah, no one can knock him for bagging that seat.
Yeah, exactly. So sixth place last year was Maverick Vinales. Maverick Vinales rode for Yamaha, for the Yamaha factory team. He's a Spanish chap, and he remains with Yamaha for the following year. Now, Maverick Vinales arrived with so much potential, didn't he, into MotoGP? We were all looking at him. He arrived with Suzuki into MotoGP. He spent 2 years, won a race for Suzuki. This at the time that Suzuki had just come back as a new factory, and it looked like it was going to be this amazing, like, oh my God, who is this Maverick Vinales? He won a Moto3 championship many years before. You're like, whoa, this guy has got it. He moved to Yamaha. And he said at the time, didn't he? My heart says Suzuki, but my head says Yamaha. And he went with his head. And fuck me, if I haven't taken the advice from this to never go with your head and to always go with your heart. Every now and again, Steve, I have a moment where I'm like, I've got to make a decision. My head says one thing, my heart says the other. I always go, shit, Maverick Vinales made the wrong choice. I'm going with my heart. And I go with my heart every single... Thanks to Maverick Vinales, I'm in the position I'm in now. Thanks to Maverick Vinales, I go with my heart every single time. Because it fucked it for him. He's won more races for Yamaha than he ever won for Suzuki. But arguably, he'd be world champion at least once or twice if he'd stayed with Suzuki.
Yeah, he is the prime example of the grass is not always greener.
Yeah, and arguably, again, the grass was greener when he made his decision. But Yamaha were probably hit their peak and were beginning their downward trajectory as Suzuki were just bringing that upward trajectory.
Yes, like you said, he made the logical decision, but for him, it was definitely not the right one. Suzuki were on the rise big time. Yamaha were on the downturn. They were coming into their sort of doldrum days where they're having problems with the bike.
When the literal factory is apologising to the riders because the bike becomes so bad.
Yeah, that was the situation where the machine they were given to ride was just unrideable and was not capable of winning a championship. A team comes out and does a full-bore press release to apologise to their riders for not giving them machines capable enough of winning races, which is unprecedented.
It was
just doesn't
completely
happen.
unprecedented at the time. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Maverick chose the logical steps, and it just didn't pay out.
Yeah.
His career has stagnated badly, and like you say, arguably, if he would have stayed at Suzuki, because we've seen them now win the World Championship with Johan Mir, that potentially could have been Maverick a year or two ago.
It probably would have been. I'm almost convinced if he'd stayed with Suzuki, they would have had more than one championship in the last 3 or 4 years, and he would have been 2 or 3 time world championship. However, this episode, Steve, is not for you and I to run off on unusual tangents. This episode is to run through the facts. We do go off on tangents. We do that, Steve, and it's a shame, but it does happen, I'm afraid.
It's one of our traits. It's one of the things that makes us appealing. We don't stick to a script. We go with the flow.
Exactly. We have notes in front of us, and then one of us has to bring the other back to the notes every now and again, because one of us sees something shiny over in the corner, and off we run to it.
Normally it's you seeing ghosts out the window or me getting attacked by big fuzzy flying things in here.
Yeah, to be fair, I only just see the ghost out the window that one time. Other than that, it's normally just me getting a wee bit drunk.
Tim does get drunk. Anyway, what is Tim drinking tonight?
It's begun. We're 45 minutes in, Steve, and we hadn't had this conversation yet. I'm on the Innis & Gunn, crafted in Scotland. They claim to be this craft beer, but it's just like a nice lager. It's like a good Foster's essentially covers it.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it's pretty good. I've now got I can't actually, I could count, but I can't be bothered how many empty cans I've got next to me. I think it's 5. And there's only one full one left in the fridge. But sadly, as you know, Steve, but those listeners, maybe some of you do know who are listening, maybe some of you don't. But my other half, Cherie, is on dry February. She's chosen to do dry February because February's the shortest month of the year. You can see why I'm with the lass.
Yep.
But she has asked that I save her an Innis & Gunn because she's never tried one. So the last one is in the fridge and I have to save it for her. Sadly, also on top of the fridge, I've got a 24-pack of ale that I got from I can't even give them. I think it was Hawk Beer or something. Because it was on sale and it appeared and I had money in my PayPal account. So I was like, well, fuck it, I might as well spend the money in my PayPal account. So I bought a 24-pack of ale that's just sitting on top of the fridge. But as of recording, it's still the 23rd of February. So I've still got another 5 or 6 days before I'm allowed to touch that, because Cherie will be raging if I touch the nice ale without her.
Well, there's a problem.
Yes, it is an issue for all of us, and that was a silence because I was taking a swig. So let's move on. Jack Miller finished 7th.
I'm glad you remembered where we were because I was lost.
Jack Miller finished 7th place last year. He was riding a Ducati bike for the Ducati Pramac squad. He's an Australian fella. And he moves to the factory Ducati squad next year. It's going to be a big time for him. He came in as the wonder child when he arrived in MotoGP. He jumped straight up from the lower class. He jumped straight from Moto3. He skipped Moto2, arrived in MotoGP, won a race in 2016, but hasn't really done anything before or after that. So it's going to be an interesting year to see him on a full factory machine.
It is. It's going to be quite nice. I'm looking forward to it. I feel like he's put the effort in to get where he is. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. And then 8th place last year was Fabio Quartararo. He rode a Yamaha for the Sepang Racing team. French fella. Well, interesting story about him, because arguably he should have been world champion. Everyone said coming into the year he would do it. He would be the guy to take the championship, and he finished 8th. He won 3 races. In fact, he won more races than everyone above him except Franco Morbidelli in 2nd place, who won the same amount of races. But all of his non-wins were fucking atrocious scores. He scored 75 of his 127 points in 3 races. The other 11 races, he scored 47 points combined.
Bad year.
He won 3. It's not often that you say a MotoGP rider wins 3 races and had a bad year, but it was a fucking bad year.
For someone who's tipped, coming off the back of a really good season, for someone who was tipped to then be the hopeful, the almost sure cert to win the championship, to have a year like this, everyone's chins are on the floor. No one could believe what we were seeing. If it was a bad day, it was a fucking bad day.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
not like I'm finishing fourth or I'm finishing fifth. It was like he's lucky to get a point.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So yeah, not a good year.
No, not a good year at all. But then we have Miguel Oliveira. Miguel Oliveira finished 9th last year. He rode for KTM under the Tech 3 KTM squad. He's a Portuguese fella. He made the most of having the Portuguese around to end the season last year, in which he dominated. He scored fastest lap. He scored pole position. He scored the race win. He led every single lap. The proper Grand Slam. And he moves to the factory KTM squad for next year. And he won 2 races last year, in fact, didn't he? Because he had that great race at... Oh, was it Austria too?
I think it was Austria too. Yeah, rode a very, very technical, wise race and just nicked it. Let 2 other guys in front of him battle it out, and just nicked the win on the last corner. Yeah. What a way to do it!
It was great, and that was one of the races of the year that had me at work. This is when I was working a real job, and it had me standing on my feet at 3:00 in the morning, literally screaming at my phone in joy because it was such a great race.
I remember that because that's one of the races that I was texting you saying, "Please, Tim, watch."
I think I did because I'd had quite a busy night at work, and I'd got to work, had loads of shit to do, and then when I finally got like an hour of I'm fully aware most people don't get an hour, just sit and watch a race at work, so I had a pretty chill job anyway. But I remember texting you at 3:00 in the morning, like, what the fuck, Steve? Why did you not tell me how exciting this was? And obviously I had to wait for you to get up and start your normal job, so I had to wait like 3 hours for you to reply. It was a painful 3 hours for me, Steve.
It was a painful day for me. Longer for me.
That's fair, I'll give you that. So 10th place last year was one Taka Nakagami. Taka Nakagami rode the Honda for the LCR Honda squad, a Japanese rider. He remains with the LCR Honda squad next year.
He does, yep, on the Indomitsu side of the garage.
Yeah, exactly, so a different livery. We had the Indomitsu livery. Then we moved down to 11th place was Brad Binder last year. He was riding a KTM for the factory KTM squad. He's a South African chap, and he remains on that team. He also won a race last year, and he actually won KTM's first ever race.
All right.
However, when I look at these points, actually, I'm like, he scored 87 points. 25 of those points were for one race.
Yeah, when you start to get down the order and look at what some of the guys did and the finishes, you're like, ooh,
yeah,
yes, you might have won a race, but the rest of your points, not that great.
Because then that brings us to actually quite nicely to 12th place Danilo Petrucci. Danilo Petrucci rode to the factory Ducati squad. He's an Italian chap, and he scored 78 points. But he also won a race. So he scored more than, almost exactly, actually, a third of his points of the 14-race season came from one race.
It shows you how unusual and strange last year was.
Last year was a very, very strange year, which we will certainly come on to.
Yes. Potentially you could see the same this year, but fingers crossed we won't. Hopefully COVID won't get in the way this year.
Yeah, exactly. So 13th place last year was Johan Zarco. He's a French fella. He was riding the Avintia Ducati last year, and he moves up to the Pramac Ducati this year. So he moves from like the 3rd tier Ducati team to the 2nd tier Ducati team, essentially. But Zarco had a weird one, wasn't he? He came in as the 2-time Moto2 world champion. And I understand you guys listening, if you're not long-time listeners, if you are people that have literally come to this show to try and understand what is going on with MotoGP, Moto2 means nothing to you. But bear with us, we will get to exactly what Moto2 means.
It's coming.
It is coming. But he was a 2-time Moto2 World Championship. He arrived on the Tech 3 Yamaha. He led 6 or 7 laps of his first ever race, Steve. That was the first race you and I ever did a show on. And he looked incredible until he crashed. But he was a rookie, so fair enough. Leave him to it, let him crash. And he had a great, great rookie season.
He did have a fabulous year. Came in with a lot of hype and straight out the blocks did not let us down.
He came in with a lot of hype, but I think he he improved upon that hype. He went, yeah, I'm well hyped, but I'm way better than you guys think I am. And he proved it in that first year and the second year, actually. He had a really great opening 2 years to MotoGP.
He certainly did, yeah. He did not let us down. Everyone had watched him win these back-to-back Moto2 championships. One of the few people to do that accolade. And then he comes in, and everyone's like, right, this guy's going to absolutely go nuts, go bonkers. He's going to win everything. He's going to show you how to do it. And our chins were on the floor. Like, hang on, a rookie shouldn't do this. This is the top, I don't know, 0.001% of riders in the world. It's hard. It's tough. It's not an easy thing to just break into and do well. And this guy comes in and was like, right, hold my pint. What's this? And just rocks it and had 2 fabulous years.
2 really great years. I mean, he didn't win a race in those 2 years, but he consistently scored podiums. He got himself a factory KTM ride out of these. He turned down a Repsol Honda ride, as it turned out, to take the factory KTM ride.
There's not many people that would do that.
Well, quite. And I mean, we've literally seen from Pol Espargaro, who has left the factory KTM when it's been at its zenith, to go and join Repsol Honda.
Yes.
But Zarco was convinced he could do it. However, he could not, and it all ended very badly. It's a saga that's well worth looking into if you guys have time, but we really don't have the time to dive into it today.
No, I just looked ahead through the notes. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, quite. So moving to 14th, then we have one Alex Marquez. Alex Marquez last year rode for the Repsol Honda squad. He's a Spanish chap. Next year he rides for the LCR Honda squad. So he's kind of had the demotion from the factory squad to the satellite squad. Now, Alex Marquez is the brother of one Marc Marquez. Marc Marquez is the guy that has absolutely fucking crushed MotoGP in the last few years. He's won, since 2013, he's won 6 MotoGP championships. One of them, he had a very crashy season, didn't win. The other that he didn't win was because he broke his arm at the very first race and didn't ride for another race.
Yeah, has literally dominated everything else.
Yes.
Came in and just set the world on fire. If you share his last name, there's a lot of pressure that comes with it.
That's exactly it. And a lot of people, I feel like Alex Marquez is unfairly judged for this reason. Alex Marquez is a Moto3 World Champion. Alex Marquez is a Moto2 World Champion. Alex Marquez in his rookie year last year in MotoGP scored 2 podiums. He's got a much, much better resume than almost every single guy on this grid. And yet we all have this impression that he's a bit shit because he's not as good as his brother, who, without getting into the greatest of all time argument, Steve, here, is arguably one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely. He's got some big boots to fill, but he certainly did not let himself down at all last year.
No.
A lot of people slated his promotion to MotoGP, getting a ride at the factory Honda team. And he certainly shut up the doubters.
Yeah, I'm still convinced at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, he will be a world champion.
Absolutely. I completely back you on that one.
And I mean the MotoGP world champion. Anyway,
Yeah.
15th place last year was arguably another of the greatest of all time in Valentino Rossi. Valentino Rossi rode for the factory Yamaha squad, as he has done for much of his career last year. He's an Italian, and he had a pretty shit season, let's be fair. He had 3 or 4 DNFs on the bounce. He had plenty of races where he should have scored and couldn't or wouldn't. He's 42 fucking years old this year, Steve. He's probably past his prime, I think it's easy to admit. And next year he's being demoted from the Yamaha squad to the Sepang racing team, Yamaha satellite team.
If you don't know who Valentino Rossi is, Google him and put a pot of coffee on, because it's a long read.
Well, Valentino Rossi is the Michael Jordan or the Lewis Hamilton of motorcycle racing, isn't he? He transcends the sport. There are people that know Valentino Rossi who know absolutely nothing else about motorcycle racing. I think if any of you are listening to us right now and you've got this far, you've got almost an hour into me and Steve attempting to try and simplify what is happening in MotoGP, and you don't know who Valentino Rossi is, then I commend you as to the fortitude and commitment you have to learning about MotoGP. But he really, really is an astounding figure. And I don't want to be the MotoGP, the Valentino Rossi fanboy, Steve. And I know that you and I have both in the past been accused of being Valentino Rossi fanboys. And then on the same week, we've been accused of being Marc Marquez fanboys. It's a weird thing, but it happens. And I don't understand. However, I try and avoid being a fanboy. But you can't... Valentino Rossi is synonymous with MotoGP.
Yeah, every sport has its name that you go to and you think of. Be it golf, Tiger Woods.
Quite.
Tennis, Federer, whatever sport that is. With MotoGP, it's Valentino Rossi.
Yeah,
that is the name that goes. If there is a face to go on the box, that is his face that fits the box.
Yeah.
No other way of going about it. Demigod in the sport.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. But next year, getting the demotion down to the Sepang Racing Team Yamaha, because he hasn't won a championship in 10 years, more than 10 years now. He's not the force he once was in MotoGP, but he's still there.
He is. Every dog has their day, and this dog's day is just starting to slow down.
Yeah.
Getting his pipe and slippers.
That's fair. And fair enough. Can't blame him for that. Just if he wants to keep going, keep going. If people are willing to pay you to keep going, fuck it. The market's there. Keep going.
Exactly. He's still in that top % of fastest riders in the world.
Yeah.
And he's a big draw. He's a big money draw. Someone will snap him up, and Spain Racing Team have.
Exactly. So then let's move to Francesco Bagnaia, who finished 16th last year. He rode for the Pramac Ducati squad. Again, another Italian fella, very good friends with Valentino Rossi. But he moves to the full factory Ducati team next year. I don't want to go too much into Francesco Bagnaia. He won the Moto2 Championship. He had a lot of potential coming into MotoGP. He scored one podium. We'll see what happens next year, and then we'll go from there, I think, on him.
Yes, yeah. He's a good rider, has yet to reach his potential in MotoGP.
He's certainly a long way from his potential. I think he's got potential. Yep. I don't think it's anywhere near it yet.
No, not yet. There's much more to come from this fella.
Exactly. So 17th last year was Aleix Espargaro. Aleix Espargaro is the brother to Pol Espargaro, who is the KTM rider who finished 5th last year and is moving to Honda next year. Now, Aleix Espargaro is the older brother and has been in MotoGP for a lot longer than Pol.
Yes.
He currently rides for Aprilia, and he will remain with Aprilia for next year. But Aprilia are a bit shit, and Aleix Espargaro has always been he's one of these guys that can always get the best out of the machinery that he's on.
Yeah, whatever you put this guy on, he will wring its neck. He will get every ounce of corner speed, straight line speed out of it he can, and he will get results from it, even if it's not capable of getting those results. Hell of a rider, and like I say, he will remain at Aprilia next year, and fingers crossed Aprilia pull something out of the bag and start making improvements, and this guy can actually start showing what he can do on this bike properly.
Yep, exactly. So following him last year in 18th was one Cal Crutchlow. Cal Crutchlow at the time rode for Honda, for the LCR Honda squad. He's a British fella, but he's out next year, so we're not really going to talk about him that much.
No.
Stefan Bradl finished 19th last year. He rode for Honda, and he rode for the factory Honda Repsol squad, replacing one Marc Marquez, who will come on to, I promise. Marc Marquez injured himself earlier in the year. Stefan Bradl took over. Stefan Bradl, German chap, again had a pretty shit year because he was their test rider. He wasn't supposed to be their race rider, so he spent a lot of the season just testing parts.
I mean, essentially, he is a German broadcaster.
Yeah, exactly. He was a MotoGP rider. He became a test rider and broadcaster. And he was supposed to ride, a few 100 kilometers a year, and then all of a sudden got thrown into riding a full-time factory ride. But at the same time, he was just testing shit. And in the last few rounds of the year, or the last round of the year, he was told, you know what, you've had a great year. Just take the setup, do what you want with the bike. Let's just see what you can do, and get his best result of the season. Yeah,
as soon as they let him loose, took the reins off, he was away. And it was just the fact that they reined him in at the start of the year.
And every round of the year, every single round, 13. Well, I guess he raced 15 rounds, right? He missed the first
Yeah.
one. So yeah, for 12 rounds of the year, he was told you test these parts, and for one round, he was told, you know what, you've had a great year, do what you like. And in that one round, he had his best results of the year, and they were good results. They were top 5s, weren't they? Top 5, top 6, something like that.
Yeah. Such a shame they didn't take the stabilizers off him earlier, because he could have done a lot better.
Yeah.
But short notice bring in, was given a criteria of stuff to do. He followed that perfectly, got his reward at the end of the year, and showed exactly what they should have done earlier in the year.
Yeah,
there we go. That's history.
Exactly it. And then we have Ika Lecuona next. Ika Lecuona, very youngest fella on the grid. He rides for the Tech 3 KTM squad, another Spaniard. And he remains with the Tech 3 squad next year. He sort of was brought in out of nowhere and sort of performed like you'd expect. So we kind of there's not much to say about Ika. Just kind of let's leave him to it and see what he can do next year.
Yeah. Boy still has to flourish, and he's getting there.
Yes, exactly. So Bradley Smith, British fella, finished 21st last year. He rode for the Aprilia squad. He's sort of out next year, probably, but there's nothing confirmed. So who really knows at this point?
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks over what is happening, who is going to have that ride. So I don't know. Let's not get into that, because I think we could cover a whole show on the whole.
You and I could easily get drunk and I could get drunk and chat for an hour on that. You'd stay sober and just roll your eyes and pretend you care about what I'm saying.
That's not the case. I'm saying just like, how many more beers has Tim got?
I'm on my very last one now, sadly. But there's plenty of other booze in there. So if it comes to that point, Steve, when we've taken a break, because this is a fucking long show, my friend. When we take a break, I might get another drink.
Break after we finish these riders.
Yeah, that's when I'm thinking of putting a break in. So we'll go for that. So anyway, let's power through them now. Anyway, Bradley Smith, British fella, Aprilia. He rode for Aprilia last year. He's out this year, scored very few points. That's kind of all you need to say, really. He might be in. He's probably not, though.
No.
22nd last year was Tito Rabat. Tito Rabat rode for the Avintia Ducati squad, maybe the Esponsorama Avintia Ducati squad. Who really knows? We've had this discussion. I don't actually know what I'm talking about when it comes to this team.
No one does, mate. Tito, been in the grid for a long time. Ex-Moto2 world champion. Never really set the world on fire in MotoGP. Had some bad crashes, some unfortunate luck, and is now out and has gone to World Superbikes.
Yeah, exactly. He's moved himself over to World Superbikes, and we wish him the best of luck over there. I think he will be very successful over there with the Barney Ducati squad.
I think he will. We'll be keeping an eye on that World Series this year.
Yes, exactly. So next up then was, we're getting very close to the end of the year, really. We have to talk about Michele Pirro because he scored points. He rode for the Factory Ducati squad. He replaced Pecco Bagnaia when Francesco Bagnaia was injured, so he rode for the Pramac team. Scored a few points, but he's kind of Ducati's test rider, isn't he? And he literally, if Ducati have got a race team, Michele Pirro has ridden that bike and will be testing that bike. He does everything. It doesn't matter the spec of machinery, the tires, like the championship.
The man
Michele Pirro, yeah, exactly, and he'll ride it fast and he'll perform. And although he's never going to win a MotoGP race, but he's always threatening the points when he does those wildcard races.
Always, yeah, just snip it. They could stick a Ducati badge on a kid's little pedal bike and he would get the best out of it.
Yeah,
he is that guy. And like you say, he has ridden everything in every series and he's covered more miles than most people will in a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly that. And then we come to one Marc Marquez, and I really don't want to talk about Marc Marquez too much tonight, Steve, because this is already a long show, and the guys listening don't really care too much, I don't think, about... maybe they should. Maybe everyone should care enough about Marc Marquez. But he rode for Honda, for the Repsol Honda squad. He's a Spanish chap, and he is arguably the most amazing motorcycle rider that's ever existed.
Oh, he certainly is. Unfortunately, in the first race out of last year, he broke his arm badly.
Yeah, so it was his top, wasn't it? The top of his arm. I get it. What's that one?
It's radius. Yeah, I think it's the radius.
Yeah, okay. Neither Steve or I are obviously medically trained here.
We're not doctors. No. The bone behind your bicep, whatever that
somewhere
one is.
Somewhere between your elbow and your shoulder, that one.
That one. He proper screwed it up.
Yeah.
Anyway, screwed it up at the first round, had a nasty crash. The bike then hits him in the arm. Very bad break. He has an operation, tries to come back at the next round. Unfortunately, cannot race. Everyone commends him for having a go, and has basically been out recouping, having surgery, and recovering from this crash ever since. Do you want to elaborate any more?
No, I think that covers it very nicely, to be fair. I think all we need to say is that through the ranks, Marc Marquez was the 125 world champion. He then came up to Moto2. He would have won Moto2 in his rookie season if it wasn't for a horrendous injury, because he's one of those guys, and you see this in sports, don't you? You see this in motorsport. You see a guy that is amazingly fast but a bit crashy.
Yeah,
and he was exactly that. He crashed himself out of his first Moto2 title, where he got a severe injury to his eye. Stefan Bradl beat him to that title. Yeah. Otherwise, he would have won it without a doubt. And you saw him when he arrived in MotoGP. He was very crashy. He crashed a lot, and he just dominated. Though he arrived as a rookie. And Steve, when is the last time a rookie won a Premier Class Motorcycle World Championship?
I can't actually remember off the top of my head. A long time ago.
Yeah, I think it's like deep into the 80s, if not before.
I think you're right. I think it's somewhere in the 80s, but it's something that we don't see all the time. Just someone step up and dominate in his kind of fashion.
And we had a weird rookie rule before then. Do you remember? And I'd sort of forgotten literally until this moment. There was the rookie rule in MotoGP that said you couldn't be promoted from Moto2 into a factory MotoGP team. You had to go through a satellite team. And they threw the rookie rule out for Marc Marquez.
Yeah, they changed it just for him, to get him on that bike, and oh my word, did it pay off.
Exactly. He won the championship, and fortuitous, maybe his teammate and his main rival in another team both got severe injuries that year, but he still did what he needed to do. He took the championship in his first year in MotoGP, and then he took it in his second year in MotoGP, lost it in his third, but took it in his fourth, took it in his fifth, took it in his sixth, and then he had his severe crash and lost it again.
Yeah.
But he is the dominant force, and when he comes back, if and when he comes back this year, he will be the dominant force even after missing a year.
Yeah, he will be the man to beat still. Remains to see what form he will come back in. All we can do is keep watching. He will be back at some point this year, and then you are in for a treat.
Yes, certainly. And it will be great. It'll be great to see him back, because there is no one that can ride a MotoGP bike like Marc Marquez can.
No, you could sit and just watch this man go round the track at full tilt all day. It is a show to behold on its own.
Yeah, it certainly is. Then that brings us. Then let's keep it moving, Steve. Let's go to Lorenzo Savadori finished technically below Marc Marquez last year. I guess technically he did finish above because he finished a race. He was riding for Aprilia. And he's an Italian chap, and maybe he rides for Aprilia next year. He kind of came in for only the last 3 rounds of the year, replacing Bradley Smith, and he came in because Aprilia, after losing Andrea Iannone, which I think I'm not going to dive into that Andrea Iannone saga now. I think just Google his name, have a good read about what happened. Just his Wikipedia entry will be good enough. But it'll give you a fun history on Iannone. He was a fun chap, very good-looking chap, fun fella.
Yeah, an interesting.
Interesting's good, and had a lot of potential. To be fair, he won Ducati's first race for at the time. When was that? That would have been 2015. So that was their first race win for half a decade. Like, he was a good rider, but a lot of shit happened there. So certainly fun to read into. But we're not going to dive into it now. But Lorenzo,
that'll be another massive tangent.
Yes, quite. Lorenzo Savadori will probably be on the grid next year, but nothing has been confirmed on that yet. And then we have, following that, the 3 rookies, which we're not going to dive into their history. In fact, Steve and I recorded 3 podcast episodes, one about each rookie. you'll have to deal with 40, 45 minutes of Steve and I chatting shit and doing news at the start of the shows, but it will cover their careers quite nicely for you. And that's Enea Bastianini, who is the Moto2 champ from last year and rides for Avintia this year, with Luca Marini, the brother of Valentino Rossi, who was Moto2 runner-up last year and rides for the VR46 Avintia Ducati this year, and Jorge Martin, who is the Moto3 World Championship from 2018. And arguably, if it wasn't for COVID, maybe would have been Moto2 champion last year, but he rides for the Pramac Ducati squad coming up.
That is it. Riders done.
Riders done. It's just a quick one that it was a weird year, like we've said, because of COVID.
It was a very weird year.
It was a short year. It was a 14-round season, should have been a 21-round season. So COVID fucked that for us. And because Marquez got injured at the start of the year, it's a strange one. Marquez is the Lewis Hamilton of MotoGP. He is the dominant force and arguably would not always win, but would always win across the season. Like, yeah. If you said to me, Marquez is fully fit and he's riding, would you bet against him? I'd be like, no, of course I wouldn't bet against him. That's a stupid idea.
No, exactly. It was an exceptionally strange season last year with COVID, with Marquez being out. The combination of these two factors seemed to throw everyone else off. And it led for a scenario that we've never seen before, is extremely unusual. To see a shortened season, so many restrictions put in place and precautions around people having to be COVID aware, riders actually getting COVID during the year and having to have 2 weekends off to recoup and to isolate. Yeah, it was such a strange year. Hopefully, it won't be quite as bad this year. It's looking like COVID's on the downturn, and hopefully each country is getting their roadmap like we are in place to come out of lockdown, and we can have a bit more of a normal year.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We can hope, and we'll see what happens. It looks like it's going to be a 19 race season. We'll get onto that through today's show, but it looks like it's going to be a decent chunk season.
It should be. It will be an unfortunate thing if you are listening to this show, and let's say, for instance, this is your first year.
God, Steve, imagine the tragedy if people listen to the start of 2022 with literally no idea that the MotoGP even happened last year, because it didn't because of COVID.
Oh, that'd be awful.
There'd just be, and if that's the case, guys, check back, because you will have maybe a year's worth of episodes of me and Steve being like, for fuck's sake, is there going to be a fucking race, mate? We need to find something else to talk about.
Oh, we will record. We will talk about something. But it will probably be just one massive tangent.
Yeah, quite. It'll just be like, what have Tim and Steve been up to?
Yeah. This week I have mostly been eating.
That's it, and you even went full Norfolk for that. I enjoyed it. Right, Steve, anyway, my friend, let us take a quick break, and then when we come back, we will dive into how the riders get to MotoGP, and then we'll dive into how a race weekend works, yeah?
Yes, go for it.
Thank you for bearing with us there, guys. I've got another drink. I'm on the vodka and Coke now because I couldn't quite bring myself to start on the nice new ales. Steve looks like he's maybe got another glass of juice. Yep.
I have, yep.
There it is. That's a well-pressed. Steve is the sensible one among us. For those of you who have not listened before, Steve is the guy that really keeps the show going in the right direction. As the further into it I get more and more drunk and fall off the wagon a little. But we're here.
Not always the case. Not always the case at all. Sometimes Tim has to be the light. That when I go off on a tangent, I like a good tangent.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I get more drunk and then go off the tangents. You just tangent. So
Yeah.
it kind of works that to start with, you'll tangent and I'll bring you back, and then I'll get a bit pissed, and then I'm willing to tangent, and you're like, no, Tim, we need to bring this. 45 minutes we've been discussing whether the best way to win a conquer competition. Do you bake it? Do you soak it in vinegar? Who knows? Because Steve brings us back, and he brings us back to MotoGP, so we don't have to have that discussion.
It works. We work well together.
So, Steve, how do the riders get to MotoGP? Let's have a brief conversation about the Grand Prix ecosystem.
There's many different ways. It varies from where you are, doesn't it? Traditionally, you could come if here in the UK we don't have like a set structure to get into MotoGP, or we didn't in the past. We do now.
But even that's unproven, to be fair. It's very new.
It is very, very new. Generally, if you're in the UK, our domestic races will take you down the superbike road, where most of the GP grid, as you mentioned earlier, are Spanish or Italian, with a rare few exceptions who come through the CEV and CIV championships. And
generally, if you're coming through CEV or CIV, you are Spanish or Italian.
Yes.
Obviously, they do have international riders, but most of them will be Spanish or Italian.
Yes, yeah. It all really boils down to where you are from. But you do ultimately come through different race series.
Yeah, certainly. So the general route to MotoGP, let's kind of cut out World Superbikes. People came to MotoGP from World Superbikes, but not really in the last 5, 6, 7, even 10 years. There's not been many successful moves from World Superbikes to MotoGP. So kind of the general route is you come through the Red Bull rookies, you come through the CEV or CIV, and then you arrive in Moto3, Moto2. So let's just go from Moto3. Moto3 is the 250cc championship, essentially. They're 4-stroke machines. They're fast as fuck. They're probably, to be fair, faster than the road bikes most of us ever have ridden or will ride. But they're 250s.
Yeah, they, again, are prototype machines, essentially.
Yeah, they're fully prototype, yeah.
Yeah. They are tuned to hell. Although, like Tim said, they are 250s. These things are fast, thoroughbred racing machines.
I mean, my 250 road-going bike was one of the favourite bikes I've ever had. I had a Honda CB250, and if you fucking pinned it out of every gear, you could hit 80.
Yeah.
One of these Moto3 bikes that are either a Honda or a KTM 250 will comfortably hit 130.
Yeah, all day long. They are insane little machines. These are young chaps as well riding these bikes.
Really young, like 15, 16 up to 18, 20.
Yeah. I'd love one of those when I was a kid on the road. Jesus Christ. But that is your starting point. Moto3 is your starting point. On the little 250 single cylinder 4-stroke machines. That is where you're going to start your road to MotoGP, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And then you would promote up to the Moto2 class. And in Moto2, you're going to be riding what until very recently was a 600cc, but is now a 765cc Triumph machine.
Yes.
And it's in Moto2, it's the chassis that's different. Everyone runs the same engine, but some of you will have a different chassis. Basically, there's the Kalex chassis. There's no longer a KTM chassis. Is there a Suter chassis? Is that still there?
I believe the Suter chassis is there, but if it is, I don't think many people run it.
No, they don't. But there's the NTS chassis and there's the speed up chassis.
Yes.
So, but the main chassis is the Kalex chassis, and everyone is running the 765 Triumph engine. Yeah. And that's kind of the testing ground for MotoGP, isn't it? The guys who dominate there or are successful there will move up to MotoGP.
Yeah, those are your first two steps. Moto3, dominate, win, leading up to Moto2, progress through Moto2, stand out from the crowd, and then, if you're lucky, you will get your promotion into MotoGP.
Yep, that's exactly it. It's probably worth also mentioning the kind of the quote unquote new series of Moto E, which is the fully electric racing series, and it's in its infancy now. But I think we will eventually. if MotoE doesn't take over from MotoGP as the premier class, which I think it eventually will. And I'm pretty convinced of that of all electric series. So if you are anti-electric on your series, then you and I have a different opinion. And please get in touch, because I'd love to hear the petrol head versus battery opinion here on this. But I'm quite convinced that in the next 20 years, we will see Formula E being the Formula One. We will see MotoE being the MotoGP. I think that's just the direction it's going in. But we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen someone come into MotoE and then into MotoGP. That's just not happened yet, except for the case of Bradley Smith, who went from MotoGP to MotoE and back to MotoGP. So it's a weird one on that front.
Yeah, MotoE at the minute is almost like kind of a standalone series. Like you say, it's in its infancy. They've brought in riders from a mixture of different racing classes. And it is beautiful to watch. I love the bikes, I love the way they look, I love the way they sound. As much as I am all for MotoGP, I completely agree that I think within 20 years this is going to become the pinnacle of racing.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the case. I'm sort of the opinion that even if I didn't agree with this, I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to be left behind in history. I don't want people to look at me and be like, you were wrong. Why are you so antiquated? I kind of want to be at the forefront of that kind of the movement, that the charge that is the future that we can't change. I want to be a part of that, because I think that's just an exciting thing to be a part of.
Absolutely. I think MotoGP is the pinnacle of racing at the moment, with the use of the internal combustion engine.
Yeah.
But the way the world is changing around it, it would be very easy to become stuck in your ways and get stuck in the past.
Yeah.
We could quite easily say, right, do away with the Motor E series and let's just concentrate on the petrol engines. But as the world evolves around you, you're going to have to keep up, because the world is moving at a fast pace now. And with like the numerous new manufacturers coming out with electric cars every year, the infrastructure around the world for electric and the promotion of electric cars, just in general, available to the public, we're going to see innovation just charging forward, and that is eventually going to get dribbled down to the racing series. We've already seen it in Formula One with the hybrid engine. What if we'll ever see that kind of amalgamation in MotoGP? I'm not sure. I don't quite know how you'd work it, but you are right. You're going to have to ride the wave at the front of this just to keep up.
Yeah. And I think it will change. I think across the globe, I think it's going to become the fossil fuels will be out, at least to power our cars and our vehicles, and that electrification is going to be the number one.
Absolutely, completely agree.
So let's dive into how a race weekend works, Steve. A MotoGP race weekend, what it looks like, what happens.
Let's go for it.
So generally a race weekend will feature the Moto3 race, it'll feature the Moto2 race, it'll feature a MotoGP race.
Right.
For a few rounds of the year, we'll also feature a Moto E race, except we had one season where we saw this play out properly, and then we had the weird COVID season where this didn't play out properly. So I guess we don't really know how Moto E is going to play out or how it's going to work at this point, but we kind of know that Moto 3, Moto 2, and MotoGP are the staples, and Moto E will eventually be included in that, but at the moment it's just kind of thrown in a bit higgledy-piggledy.
Yeah, they're in there. Like you say, we got one glorious year where it all worked in perfectly and it was great. Then COVID struck and it all got thrown up in the air and it was just random. We don't know yet fully how this year is going to play out, and we can only have fingers crossed that next year we get that perfect year again and we get the full race series of Moto E, Moto 3, MotoGP, and Moto 2, and it will all then run smoothly and be a lovely flat surface like a racetrack.
Exactly. We'll wait and see what happens with that, eh?
God knows what's going to happen.
So normally on a race weekend, then we see the teams arrive at the circuit on the Tuesday or Wednesday. They'll set up the garages, they'll set up their hospitality suites, they'll set up their motorhomes. Thursday comes around and we see the teams and the riders. They start with the press conferences. The media are there and they kind of want to talk to everyone. What's been going on? What are the big storylines? Who's fighting who for the championship? Has there been any controversy? That's what we'll talk about. And that's what happens over the Thursday. The Friday rolls around. The Friday we see the first practice sessions pretty much. We see that we have the FP1 and FP2. So FP is free practice. You'll hear that referred to a lot. We have FP1 and FP2. These are sessions used for getting ready for the race. We also have an FP3 that's the Saturday morning and also getting ready for the race. Everyone's testing the best setups, the best tyres, the best suspension, the best electronics packages. They're learning the track and they're trying to set up for the race, but they also need to get a fast time in because there's this weird quirk of MotoGP that we have these two qualifying sessions, that we have the Q1 and the Q2. We will dive into it now. I guess to cover it is Q1 will cover the guys that will be finishing 13th up to last. And Q2 is the guys that will be finishing 1st to 12th. And I say finishing, I mean starting the race in those positions. But it's not quite as simple as that, is it, Steve? The guys go through their 3 qualifying sessions and getting my words confused. The guys go through their 3 free practice sessions. Each one is about 45 minutes long. And I say about, I mean exactly 45 minutes long. And they go through those and they're trying to compete to get straight into that Q2. They don't want to fuck about having to go through Q1 to Q2. And I'm really trying hard to explain this correctly, Steve. And I think I've got it so far, but if I get it wrong at any point, please interject. Please jump in and tell me I'm wrong. So they go through these sessions. The FP1, FP2 are both on the Friday. That ends the Friday. The Saturday, it rolls around. Saturday morning, we have the FP3 session. It's their last chance to jump straight into Q2 instead of Q1.
Right.
If you don't get through to Q2, there is an FP4, but the FP4 is kind of irrelevant. The FP4 times are not counted. So we kind of cut those out. They're not important. But your top times from FP1, from FP2, from FP3, they're the ones that go towards. And the guys with the fastest lap times in then, we put them on a chart. The top 10 fastest guys, straight through to Q2. We don't worry about those at all. The rest of the guys will then fight it out for positions. As we've just discussed, positions 14th upwards. 13th upwards, sorry. 13th upwards. And these guys, they'll go out and they will put in the fastest possible laps they can in Q1. The fastest laps. And qualifying is a fun thing to watch, actually, Steve. I enjoy qualifying because you see the guys, they put on the tyres, they go on limited fuel loads, and they fucking go. They really, really go. And there's mixed strategies in there, isn't there, Steve?
There is some huge strategies in qualifying. It's a 15-minute session, so both qualifying 1 and qualifying 2 are just 15 minutes. That's all you get. You've done all your free practices, you think you've got your perfect setup, and you've set your time. You're in qualifying 1 and you go for it. You go out, and generally in that 15 minutes you could do 2 to 3 laps with a warm-up lap to start with to get your tyres and brakes up to heat. You then get the opportunity to lay down 2 laps at most, and then come into the pits, make any tiny little adjustments that you need to, and then you're back out. And this is the point, the second part of each practice, get my words mixed up now. The second part of qualifying 1 is where we will see these bottom riders put in the fastest times, and these guys go for it. You'll see red sectors everywhere indicating that people are putting in fastest lap times through all of the sectors.
I guess it's worth briefly there, actually, Steve, and we haven't got this in our notes anywhere, but it's worth discussing what we mean by red sectors.
Right.
Because you will see it on the MotoGP broadcast, where you will see each lap. And I guess if you're familiar with Formula One, you'll see a similar thing. But Formula One, the grid is only split into 3 sectors. Or not the grid, sorry. The track is split into 3 sectors. In MotoGP, it's split into 4 sectors. Again, the colours are different. In MotoGP, you'll see the helmets appear. I don't really know how to describe this very well, but against the guy's name across the circuit, you'll see 4 helmets appear under their name while they're doing their lap. If they hit a grey helmet and the colour goes grey, it means that they have not matched either their personal best or the track's best. That's just a time they've put. So sector 1 over, say it's a 2-minute lap, arguably sector 1 should be 30 seconds. If they don't hit 30 seconds, then it's going to be grey. Yeah. If they hit 29 seconds, it's their personal fastest lap, then maybe they'll hit orange. If it's 28 seconds and the fastest lap anyone has ever performed around there, or at least in this session performed around there, they'll hit a red sector. And that's the important thing. We're looking for reds here. In Formula One, we're looking for purple. In MotoGP, we're looking for red. And
red is key.
Yeah.
That's the one you want. You want to be the fastest rider through all 4 sectors. That equals the fastest time possible. All these riders are hunting for this. Often you will see one rider will be fastest, say, in sector 1. They will then be a little bit slower in sector 2. They might get a personal best, an orange indicator there. They'll then go through sector 3. Sometimes they could even set a grey. It all depends on how quick you're going to be.
I mean, you could set your first 2 sectors as so fast, you could hit a grey sector, which is not even your personal fastest, let alone the weekend's fastest in sectors 2 and 3. But if your first 2 are fast enough, you could still set the best lap time over the weekend.
Yeah, this is what makes racing so interesting, because it comes down to then the fine little 4th digit numbers where we're talking about 10,000ths of a second. It gets very, very, very close.
And it really does, doesn't it? Like, we've seen races and qualifying sessions won by thousandths of a second, like faster than you could even dream of blinking.
Yeah, sometimes these bottom guys and even the top guys in qualifying 2 will be split. 13, 14 guys to be covered by less than a second.
Yeah, and that would be quite normal.
That is pretty damn normal. So we're talking milliseconds here to get around the track. These guys are that precise every lap. But you're looking for those red sectors. If you are the lucky 2 who qualify first and second in qualifying 1, you then get the opportunity to progress into qualifying 2. You then become riders 11 and 12 in that category, and you then get a second go. The rest of the guys that you've just been competing with will make the numbers from 13th down to last. They're done. They go back to their pits. They get a shower. That's their Saturday done. That is their position. They will start on the Sunday for the race. Qualifying 2 comes around, and everyone from 1st down to 12th, including the 2 guys who have been out in qualifying 1, get a second go, and the guys who are 1st to 10th get their first go. Same format. 1 warm-up lap, 2, if you're lucky, maybe 3 flying laps to set a good pace, back into the pits, fine adjustments, then all hell breaks loose. These are the fast guys. These are the pointy end guys. They are going out there, and it is not uncommon in this half of this session to see red sectors everywhere, because everyone is setting down the fastest laps possible. And it will swap, and it will change, and it gets bloody interesting at this point. And then ultimately, at the end of this session, whoever is fastest goes first. If you're one of those lucky 2 who have come through from qualifying 1 and you have a blinding pace, you can progress further up the order, and you could finish first if you're bloody lucky.
Which we've certainly seen in the past, haven't we? We've seen someone like Marc Marquez has certainly had a terrible practice sessions all the way through. For like the 3 practice sessions, he's been nowhere. And then you can drop him into Q1, and he's like, boom, on the top of Q1 by half a second on everyone else, and then he'll go and put it on fucking pole.
Yeah, it's happened a rare few times, but it's not unheard of. This is what makes this sport so enjoyable. It's so close, and things like this get thrown in the mix where you just can't even comprehend that it's happening. The qualifying 2 will come to an end. The lucky bugger's in first. He set the fastest time of the weekend, and we will now have our starting order. First down to 20 seconds. Descending order.
That's exactly it. So then that sets us up perfectly for Sunday, because Sunday is where we go from there.
Yes.
And Sunday starts with the warm-up sessions. The warm-up sessions, and I mean, we haven't actually discussed how Moto2 and Moto3 do this, and even Moto E, but Moto2 and Moto3 go through the same setup now. They just have slightly less time on the grid, and their practice sessions are slightly shorter, their qualifying sessions are slightly shorter. Maybe for Moto3, because there's so many guys on the grid, they will have 4 guys go through from Q1 to Q2, as opposed to the 2 that we have in MotoGP. But apart from that, for all intents and purposes, it's the same system going on.
Yeah.
So then warm up, we see Sunday mornings, we see warm up. We see Moto3 going out on track first. We see Moto2 going out on track, and then Moto3. And they've just got 20 minutes each. And this is just to get those last final details in. Maybe it's colder than it was for qualifying day through all their practice days. Maybe it's warmer. Maybe it's raining and it wasn't before. But they need to know what's going on the track on that day to get ready for the race.
Yeah. It's just sometimes I've looked at warm-up before, and I've looked at the track. I think this is going to bear no relevance to this afternoon when their race is. But they still go out and they do the warm-up anyway. And sometimes it's just nice to see. It leads you on nicely for the day. But it's an essential part of the race day. They have to do a warm-up session. They have to take part in this warm-up session.
And this is something we see more in like Qatar and in places where we're seeing like Qatar's a weird one, isn't it? Because we see like the it becomes night in their warm up session. It's day, and then it's night for the race. So really, the track has dropped 30 degrees. There's condensation on the track that wasn't there for warm up. It's a weird scenario because it's not the same. But they still go out and they still get the data in, and they still have to get every possible lap in to just collect the data to understand what's going to happen in the race.
All right, time on track essentially is key. The longer you can be on track, the more data you can collect, the better understanding of race conditions you are going to have. Some people do argue it is better to go through qualifying 1 and progress into qualifying 2 because you get that extra 15 minutes on track.
Yeah.
Other people don't like it and they want to go straight into qualifying 2 and not have to go through qualifying 1, but it is just personal preference and, again, personal preference and opinion of the viewer.
Yeah, that's it. And arguably some fans, Steve, will say that some fans will be there and say, actually, I'd like less practice because it means they get less data and they don't know what's going to happen in the race. And it's just a bit more like, whoa, there's a bit more chance involved. It's a bit less. Let's just throw money at it and see what happens. If there's less information, there's less chance. And that's quite interesting as well. I'm kind of on that camp. I quite like the idea that let's just remove 2 or 3 practice sessions and just let's see what happens when they haven't got a fucking clue what's going on. But
just fly by wire.
Well, quite. And I'm very pro that. But other people are not so pro that for safety reasons and arguably for monetary reasons. If I can invest a shitload of money into something and get a good return from it as it is, then let's leave it as it is. And you sort of understand that in a sport that's worth hundreds of millions a year.
Exactly. I'm just the opinion that I love seeing these bikes go around the track, and the longer I'm on the track, the better.
Well, exactly. And that's kind of the important thing, isn't it?
All right. That does lead us on nicely to the important bit, which is Sunday, race day.
The important, the reason we're all here, and even the reason that Steve and I are here discussing this, and the reason we all tune in on a Sunday is for the race, is it not?
All right, this is the day where if I'm sat on the sofa and you're in my house, don't speak to me because I ain't going to talk back.
I remember the one time I was in your house you and I have literally only watched one race together, Steve. We've been one race live together. We've been recording a MotoGP podcast now. This is our 4th year going into it. And we have been friends for longer than that, and we've discussed MotoGP for longer than that. We've literally only watched one race live together. And it
is quite bizarre that in all that time...
it's 2 races live together, but one of them was in your house, the other one was in London.
That is true. Yes, that is very true. Yeah, that is quite bizarre. 2 races live in all that time, but a hell of a lot longer chatting about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right, because I remember that one race we watched together. It was Argentina. What year? 2018?
Was this the weird Jack Miller?
The weird Jack Miller, yeah. It was 2018.
2018.
2018? Yeah, okay. So it was a weird year, and I remember being like, Steve, this is stressing me out. I'm going out for a cigarette. And I remember you just being like, shut up, I'm watching the race. I was like, whoa, this has happened. Did not expect that. And I went out for my cigarette, and I came back in, and I sat down, and you're like, brilliant, let's watch the race. And he was straight into it. There was no recollection at all. I was like, he's been fucking rude to me and doesn't even realise. And then I realised a few races later, when I was sitting at home watching it, and Cherie said something to me, and I was like, no, there's racing. I'm not listening to this. I was like, whoa, this is what Steve did to me the other day. I understand completely now. I'm on board. This is fine.
That's just what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I've got 2 kids. I'm like, what are these little things? Oh, mine.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, whoa, shit, he's out the door. I better just check that.
You want food?
You're like, not while this race. It's 45 minutes, kids. You can wait.
I normally put on a buffet.
That's the best way to do it.
Like, little ankle height buffet. Like, help yourself.
That will certainly do the job, man. That gives you at least the 45 minutes that you need, because as we've discussed, the race is 45. It's 40 to 45 minutes long. It doesn't matter whether you are a Moto 3, a Moto 2, or a MotoGP contender. The race will always be about that length. So they see it, they see the lap times you're doing, and they make the race around that length perfectly. Yeah. So if you have a 16-lap race as a Moto 3 bike, that will probably be a 22-lap race as a MotoGP bike. Just to get that all in. So that works perfectly.
Works nicely.
And then points. And I mean, it's a fun race. It's always a fun scrap. And it's always a fun scrap if it gets to the last corner and it's a last lap battle. It very rarely is, but sometimes it is. And in the last few years, we've been treated to a last lap battle, haven't we?
We have a lot. I did spend a lot of time sort of looking at the notes when I was writing mine down, thinking, how can I describe a typical race scenario? And it was nearly impossible because the possible outcomes are pretty much infinite. And the only way I was going to write in my notes to describe a MotoGP race is sit down and watch it and enjoy.
I mean, that kind of covers it, doesn't it? Because that is it. Like, there's so many possibilities that can happen. And it's arguable that, like, that's just sort of normal, isn't it? Like, there's there's a chain of decisions that can change all of our lives at every single moment. But within the racing sphere, it's more obvious, I think.
Yeah. If you're a seasoned race fan and you sit down on a Sunday and you start to watch a race and you've watched Friday's practice, Saturday's qualifying, you will already have a little bit of a mental idea built up of what scenarios could play out on that Sunday. It will completely change for the following Sunday at the next race because it will be a completely different set of environmental factors affecting it. But if it's the first race you've watched and you've got no clue what's going on, just sit down. Don't let anyone else speak to you and enjoy, because it will be fantastic.
And that's certainly it, yeah. Ignore the world. Get on with it. And you don't have to ignore the world, to be fair. Like, you can be chatting to people, but just spend some time and focus on it, and it's certainly worth it.
It is. It absolutely is. We watch it every weekend.
I think so there's 52 weeks in a year. I would imagine across a year I watch at least 52 races, bearing in mind that there's only 18 to 21 races every year. I just go back and watch old races. I go back and watch, well, obviously you can only go back and watch old races. You can't go back and watch future races. That'd be a weird thing. And if you can do that, please, good Lord, let me know, because I could make a shit ton of money off that and I'd be willing to share. Just saying. I'd be willing to share with whoever gives me that information. But yeah, I spend a lot of time watching old races. I spend a lot of time watching old documentaries. And actually, you know, Steve, that I spend a lot of time watching other racing series as well. I'm not just a MotoGP fan. I'm also, as I've just spilt there, a Formula One fan. I love a lot of racing, full stop.
Yeah, you're a more broad spectrum motorsport fan. I am more of a two-wheeled motorsport fan. My TV plan will be full of World Superbikes, Moto America, British Superbikes, MotoGP, the CEV, the Red Bull Rookies Cup, and it is mainly two-wheel based racing. I will watch a bit of the rally. I will watch a bit of the Formula One. But then I speak to you, and I'm like, my God, how many different race series do you watch?
Nah, the difference between us is like I will watch Moto 3, I'll watch Moto 2, I'll watch MotoGP, and then I'll go and I'll watch Formula 1, I might watch Formula 2, I might watch Formula 3, but I'll then watch Rally, I might watch like IndyCar, like I'll just watch. Whereas you will focus on a specific two-wheel sport and branch down from there. I kind of focus on the pinnacles of each sport. And I just kind of watch the top spec of each sport. So I don't know. I feel like you've got like the more like this is what it should be. I'm watching the grassroots, whereas I'm kind of the guy that's like, I'll be the glory hunter and just watch every top pinnacle sport that is because I just want them all. So I think it's an interesting difference between the two of us, certainly. And it'd be a fun thing to break down in the future between us. But yeah, I think it's certainly true that you will watch more motorcycle racing than me, whereas I will watch more kind of top pinnacle sport than you do. Motorsport, at least, yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely. Completely agree with you.
So anyway, when we're done with the racing, we collect points, don't we? We collect points. You finish first, you score the 25 points. We've run through the points earlier. I did that when I was maybe 4 or 5 less beers in than I am now, and I think I got it right then. So I'm not going to try and do it again. But you collect points as you go through, and those points give you the championship at the end of the day.
Yes.
There's not just the Riders' Championship. There's the riders collect whatever points they collect to go through. So you win, you collect 25 points. Happy days. That's 25 points towards your Riders' Championship. But the teams also collect points, don't they? The teams collect whatever all of their members or both of their members for the team score. So if I finish first and second, I scored the 25 plus the 20. I scored 45 points for my team. That's a fucking result.
Absolutely.
And then there's the team championship at the end of the year.
Yes.
There's also the manufacturer's championship at the end of the year. This is the one that gets a little confusing. So the manufacturer championship, so say the manufacturer is Honda, and the Honda riders come, let's argue, first and fourth here. They only collect the points for the top finishing rider. So they only collect the 25 points. The fourth place is thrown out the window. However, if they haven't collected those 25, if that was say a Ducati, a Yamaha, a KTM, then a Honda, they'll just collect the 25, 20, 16, 13 points for fourth place.
Yep.
So that's how the manufacturer championship works, and that's why you'll see some weird results in the riders' teams and manufacturer championship across the year. I mean, last year, what did we saw? We saw Suzuki with Johan Mir win the riders' championship, but they did not win the team or manufacturer championship.
No, I don't believe they did. That went to the
Ducati won the manufacturers championship,
and the team, I believe, went to Yamaha.
Ooh, did it?
I believe the Yamaha was the most consistent team throughout the year.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm not totally sure if that's the case, but I cannot argue against it because I haven't looked it up properly, Steve, because as per usual, let's set the bar high here, and you and I are going to produce a show that is fun for everyone involved, but maybe not bang on in factuality. And actually, as it turns out, the team champion was the Suzuki X-Star team. So they won the team championship and the manufacturer championship, but Ducati won the constructor championship.
I knew it was blue.
And Yamaha came second, so Suzuki didn't actually. Suzuki finished third in the constructor championship.
That was always better to have only 2 bikes on the grid.
Exactly, and that's their kind of their problem there, isn't it?
But that is the point scoring scenarios for the 3 breakdown championships, if you will: rider, constructor, and team.
That's it. Right, so, Steve, let's you and I take a quick break, my friend, and when we come back, we will just dive into the last part of this show, eh?
Let's go for it.
Thank you for bearing with us there, guys. So we have just discussed everything from the race weekends to the championship to the riders, and we just want to have a brief chat here about there's things that can occur over every weekend that aren't quote unquote normal, and we'll call this the flags and procedures. So there's kind of rarely a session in MotoGP or in any of these classes that goes by without someone falling off their bike. You're bound to see it. It's kind of just part of the sport. And I guess it's sort of got that weird gladiatorial, like, that. It's got that weird appeal, and it has, and I don't really care whether you will admit this or not, but the idea that these guys could crash and die is part of the draw of the sport. It's part of the danger. It's part of not the fun, but it is what keeps eyes on the screen. When you see people going around a corner at almost 200 miles an hour and you know, fuck, if they get this just 1 degree wrong, if they squeeze the brake just 1% too much, they could crash and die. It's part of the sport. And
it's the risk element, isn't it? The absolute fear factor, the adrenaline.
Exactly.
Anyone who's ridden a bike on the road and had a little wobble or a little moment, you'll know how much your cheeks clench up. And for these guys who are doing it every weekend and a lot faster than us, when things do go wrong, they certainly go wrong.
And I think it takes a special kind of person, doesn't it? It takes a special kind of person to be willing to put yourself through that. Like, I'm a very risk-averse person. Not risk-averse. I'm a very pro-risk person in my life. I'm the kind of fucking idiot that will stand at the edge of a cliff on a windy day because, well, if I fall, that's going to be a fucking, like, that's going to hurt. So it's a fun gamble, isn't it? Like, I'm that kind of idiot. And I'm aware that there are other kind of idiots like that. But a professional motorcycle racer, that's another level. Like, that's another level of fucking getting your kicks where you can.
It's a weird thing on these bikes. We discussed it in, I can't remember if it's the previous show or the one before, but if you get a wobble on a bike, the easiest way to get out of that wobble is to pin it.
And that's a weird thing for you and I, and for probably anyone listening to this to understand, because when I've had a wobble in the past on my bike, I've dropped the fucking throttle, probably pulled the clutch in, and just let the bike reset itself, and then I gently let the clutch go, gently bring the throttle back up, and then you go again. And I've had this in Scotland, overtaking cars before, and I've hit a cat's eye in the wet, and you just fucking, it feels like you're swaying like this. It feels like you're going all over the place, but arguably you probably couldn't see that at all. It's just what I'm feeling. When you can see on TV what is happening to these guys, it's completely different.
Yeah, at plus 100 miles an hour, going around a corner at, I don't know, 20-degree lean angle, and these guys are wobbling like crazy. And what's the easiest way? Gun it.
Yeah.
Any normal, sane person would shit themselves, close the throttle.
Exactly, and I'm that guy. I'm the guy that will pull the throttle shut, I will pull the clutch in, and I'll let the bike reset before I even bother putting anything back.
Yeah, it's a different level of psychopath to pin that.
We're accusing all MotoGP riders of being psychopaths right now, Steve. You're making a statement, you're going to open us up to a lawsuit, my friend.
You know what I mean. It is that mental ability to shut off fear and go for it.
Exactly. But sometimes, Steve, shit does go wrong. And when shit goes wrong, there are flags and there are procedures in place to save us. So if you're watching this sport, there is no doubt you'll witness multiple crashes across a weekend, but there are procedures in place to save us, and not save us, because the viewers at this point, if you ask me, and I mean, maybe if you ask Dorna, it's different, but if you ask me, what I think and feel is sort of irrelevant to the safety of the riders on the track. But if there is a big crash, there is a procedure in place, and there are flags and there are things to save us. So let's run through the flags, Steve. And if someone crashes, what is the basic flag they throw out? There's a crash. We don't know anything more about it. There's just a crash. Shit, let's throw a flag. What is it?
Yellow.
It's the yellow flag, Steve. And what does the yellow flag do? What does the yellow flag mean to everyone else on track?
It just symbolizes caution in that sector. So when that flag is waved, the riders have to slow down and they're not permitted to overtake. This is, let's say a rider has slid off the bike, he's okay, but his bike and himself are in the gravel runoff. If another bike comes around the corner at full race speed and crashes, the potential is, or the worst possible scenario is, that bike and that rider are going to collide with the bike and the rider already in the gravel. And we've seen it ourselves in the past.
Tito Rabat, 2018.
Yeah, Johan Zarco, 2018, Valencia.
Oh, God, yeah.
That was when we were in London. Hell of a crash.
Yeah.
Didn't look behind him. A rider had exactly the same crash a split second later. Zarco gets up and walks away, and the bike wipes his ankles out and he does a full wall backflip. If you haven't seen that race and you're new, Google it, YouTube it, because this is a prime example of what you do not do.
Because in that example, Zarco didn't even look back. He didn't look over his shoulder. No. He didn't look for another bike coming in. And I guess this is a good point to reiterate now. And I assume anyone that's got this far in the show probably isn't a racer and hasn't raced at all. But if you're even doing a track day, guys, if you crash, check behind you, get up, check behind you, see what's happening behind you, because if you've gone down unexpectedly, maybe it was a patch of oil, maybe it was a patch of debris, maybe it was a patch of moisture that just shouldn't have been there. Just check behind you, because someone else could be having that same crash as you, and if you are then in the path of that. So just make sure you look over your shoulder, look at what is going on, and cover your own back for this.
Yeah. The riders crashed, yellow flags were waved, the other riders on the track have to slow down and they cannot overtake. What will happen then is the rider, if he's able, will make his way off track and behind the safety barriers. The marshals will then recover the bike, take it to the side of the track, and the rest of the marshals will then wave a green flag, which will symbolise the track is clear and racing or practice can resume at full race pace. If a rider crashes and is not able to make his way off the track under his own speed, the yellow flag will be waved. The rider will be assessed, and then if the race session is deemed, or the rider is deemed bad enough to need medical attention, a red flag will be raised.
And that would depend on whether they can move the rider, won't they? If the rider is, if they can get the rider on, like, say, a spinal board, and they can move him from wherever he's crashed to behind the safety barriers, they'll leave the race as is. However, if it's deemed that it is not safe to move the rider from where he is because of his safety, then they will red flag the session.
Yeah, normally we see a red flag. It's for a mechanical. Let's say, for instance, a rider's riding around the track on his bike and the engine blows. 9 times out of 10, you'll see a massive plume of smoke blow from the back of the bike, and the potential is that bike is leaking some kind of lubricant, oil, coolant all over the track. This then puts all the other riders in danger. The track becomes slippy. Again, we've seen this scenario where multiple riders go down into one corner.
Do you remember there was a Moto3 race, and I cannot remember when it was, but it's been the last few years, where someone did that and they just dropped like maybe 13 bikes just into the gravel.
Yeah, unfortunately, what happened, I think, in that race, I could picture it as well because it was a right-hand corner.
Yeah, exactly. I can picture it too, and I was also thinking of a right-hand corner.
Yeah. But this unfortunate chap, his bike blew, dumped oil. I believe it was in the first couple of laps, even the first lap, dumped oil on this corner. But it was so quick. I think these other riders were only like maybe one corner behind him.
I mean, they were the first few laps of a race. It doesn't matter what happens. There is no way you can stop a rider at the front and affect the rider at the back. Like if a rider at the front in the first 2 or 3 laps of any motorcycle race, it has pissed oil out, everyone is fucked. There's no way you can stop that because they're just so close.
No. Fortunately, normally this happens during a practice session, an engine will blow, or during the race, and there's a sufficient gap behind that machine that the red flag can come out, the bike can get safely off the track, and the other riders can be warned in time to stop and take a wide line around that debris or oil. And the session will be stopped until the track has been made safe, and safety checks and procedures have been adhered to. Often you see like the safety car going around the track first. They will test that corner. When it's deemed clear and safe enough to race, pit lane will be reopened, the bikes can come back out again. Green flag, all go full pace, full bore. I'm trying to think of the other flags now off the top of my head.
So where we are with flags then, let's say if a rider falls and there's no chance they can get back on the bike, then that's game over for that rider, that's done. If there's a fall and a serious injury, then we may see a red flag at this point.
Yeah.
The red flag kills it and the rider is pulled off the track. The rider, the injured rider is severely injured. We hope we don't see these red flags.
Yeah, it's not very often we see them waving red flags for a severely injured rider anymore, because of safety precautions with the leathers, with the tracks, with the runoff. But it does still unfortunately happen. It's a very sad day when it does.
Yeah, exactly. But there's worse flags than the red flag. The red flag just kind of means the session is postponed, it's paused. Just go back to the pit, wait for your time. When you're told, you can come back out, you can get on with the session, and happy days for that, really. The flag we all fear seeing is the black flag, isn't it? The black flag kind of means the session is, I say it kind of means, the black flag 100% means the session is cancelled. If a session is cancelled, the session is cancelled for one of two reasons, really. The session is cancelled because someone is so hurt that we're not sure they're going to survive, and we're not sure the track is suitable for racing from this point. Or it means that the track conditions are beyond savable. Silverstone 2019, 18. Silverstone 2018, we saw the race get black flagged because the track conditions were not good. We could not run a MotoGP race in that. So the session was black flagged.
Yeah, black flag due to rain, which you honestly could have rowed a boat down the back straight.
Exactly. Before that, Malaysia 2011 was the last the race that got black flagged? No, it was the last session that got black flagged when Louis Salom's crash in Moto2.
Yeah.
I don't know what year that was off the top of my head. I really should have looked this up because it's very disrespectful of me. 2017 or 18 would be off the top of my head, but I don't know that.
I believe it's 2017.
So Louis Salom was a Moto2 rider who died at Catalunya.
Yeah.
In a big crash, and it was black flagged on the Saturday. However, thanks to his family giving permission, the race weekend continued.
Yeah.
But when we saw Malaysia 2011, when we saw Marco Simoncelli unfortunately lose his life on a track, that weekend was black flagged and that was done. A black flag is a cancellation of the session and very often a cancellation of the weekend, but it depends why that's occurred. Yeah.
It's very, very rare we see a black flag, but it is for extreme circumstances, and it's never circumstances that any fan or anyone involved in the motorsport wants to see.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And there are many more flags in motorsport. There's they call it the meatball flag, don't they? The orange circle on a black flag that means there's a mechanical failure on your bike or on your vehicle. You need to deal with that. There's loads of flags across motorsport that are quite universal. That, to be honest, Steve and I do not have time to dive into now. But just go to your local go-kart track and they'll talk you through a lot of these flags.
Yeah, or Google them. There is a lot. For instance, one quickly off the top of my head, blue flag. If you see a blue flag being waved at you, it is an indication that a faster rider is approaching from behind. And
no, it's not a faster rider, is it? It's a faster rider who is a lap ahead of you.
Yeah, you're about to be lapped. Get out of the way. Do not interrupt the race, which is essentially now going to go past you.
Yeah,
or for instance, there's a white flag being raised that indicates rain on the track.
Yep. The white flag's complicated, and I don't want to dive too deeply into it now, actually. But you can literally Wikipedia a lot of the racing flags, and they will tell you what series which flags are relevant to.
Yeah, sometimes it's quite easy to get your flags mixed up between series because they differ.
Because it differs annoyingly. Oh my good lord!
Oh,
And
it is a
eventually, at
headache.
some point, and it's got to a point with car racing, with the FIA. Aside from the American car racing series, most international car racing series fall under the FIA, and it's quite similar with the FIM and with motorcycle racing series. They kind of, aside from the American series, they all fall under the FIM. So the slowly flags and rules are being they're being centralized, and they're starting to mean the same things, but you kind of need to look deeply into whichever series you're watching, whether it's MotoGP, whether it's World Superbikes, whether it's Moto America, whether it's British Superbikes. You need to look into whichever flags are relevant to that series, because they will change slightly. Sadly, it's just part of it. It's part of the learning curve.
Yeah, it is. It takes a little while to get used to them, and there are a lot depending on what series you're watching. But Google it and just Google MotoGP flags, and you will find a perfect description of what they are, what they mean, and when you're likely to see them. And essentially, like Tim said, Google it for whatever motorsport you're looking at, and you will see similarities. If you look at it back in the past, you'll find that most series had their own independent flags, and if you watched multiple categories, it was a head fuck because you had to remember like 60, 70 flags.
I mean, I get confused, to be fair, like we've just discussed with the helmet colours between in Formula One. If you hit a purple sector, you've hit the best sector. If you hit a red sector in MotoGP, you've hit the best sector. And that confuses me enough. Let's not throw flags into the equation here. Like, as soon as you get into multiple forms of motorsport, this gets confusing as fuck. But it's just something you need to deal with, sadly.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is an unfortunate thing. You will see maybe 5 flags waved often. It's rare you will see many more, but they do pop up every now and again, and all of a sudden you're like, what the hell does this mean? It is annoying.
Most of the time, though, you'll just see yellows. Reds are a problem. Blacks are like, whoa, this is a big problem. You'll see the meatball flag occasionally. Other than that, you're probably okay.
Obviously, you're going to see the checkered flag at the end of every race.
A checkered flag's a good thing. That means your heart rate can drop. That means your adrenaline levels can drop. Like, it's okay then.
if you're the first one to see it, or first, second, or third, it means you're going to get some champagne. That's a good day.
Yeah, fucking result, mate. Any day with booze is a good day.
Every day is a good day for Tim, then.
The life of being single and not having kids, my friend. Not single. I do have another half. I just don't have the kids.
No, don't have kids and get drunk. I found that out to my detriment the other day.
Very little responsibility to go with my life, which is good for me.
I'm envious.
Anyway, well, you say you're envious, Steve, and you can be envious now, but maybe in 3 or 4 years, I'll be the envious one. And that's kind of what I'm expecting to happen.
You will be jealous when I get the boys that first little pit bike.
You say that, but I will then be nicking their pit bike, so it's not really that much of an issue for me, is it?
No, I do.
I'll be like, come on, Enzo, give us a go. He'll be like, all right,
Enzo
Tim.
will be like, all right, Tim.
All right, weird Uncle Tim that just hangs about occasionally. That's fine. I'm happy to be weird Uncle Tim. That's okay with me.
Yeah, but you love coming around when Enzo's here because he gives you cake.
Enzo is a good man for cake. What can I say? I mean,
Steve,
what have you done for me? You've given me a friend to talk about, but like MotoGP about. But your kid has given me cake, Steve. You've got some. Like, he's really set the bar here, and you really need to compete for this.
All right, I'll see what I can do when you're back.
God, if it's better than cake, I'm going to be fucking stoked, my friend.
Oh, what's better than cake? Sex?
Oh God, don't be throwing that out on the internet, my friend. So let's talk about.
Move on.
Yeah, quite. So MotoGP, as we know, whatever team you're riding for, whoever you are, you collect points across the season. The points make you the MotoGP World Champion. But you compete across a series of rounds for the year. And we're only going to go now, Steve, and list through the 2021 rounds, because if we try and list further than that, it's confusing, it's complicated. And with what has happened with COVID, it just makes it a tough thing to talk about.
It does.
So let's
Certainly
dive
does.
into what the 2021 season looks like, where we're going to go with the races, with the different rounds in that season, and let's go from there.
Let's go for it.
So round 1 of the year, this is after testing, guys. This is after everything preseason. We're now into the points. We're into the real shit. This is it. This is what matters. We go to the Grand Prix of Qatar at the Losail International Circuit in Qatar. It's a good track for Ducati. I don't have much more to say than that. It's a nighttime circuit. It's under the lights. We get to see we see the liveries differently because it's under the lights. It's fun. It's an exciting race. It's a spectacle for the first race of the year.
It certainly is. It's not my favourite track by a long shot, but it's just the fact that it's under the lights that adds that element of something different, and the bikes look fantastic.
They do, but this year we get a second round after the lights at Qatar. It's the Grand Prix of Doha, same track. It's the Losail International Circuit in Qatar. I'm sort of over it, the idea. I like it once. I don't really care about it twice.
I like the fact we only had it once in previous years because it makes it special.
Yeah.
That second round, I think, is going to be a bit like, it's Qatar. Somebody turn the lights off because, Greta won't be happy.
Let's not hate on Greta. I'm a big Greta fan here, Steve. Let's not hate on Greta here.
All right, she loves the two-stroke.
She does not. Let's move on to then round 3. Round 3 brings us to Portimao, Portugal. This is a fun track because this had not existed until last year, until 2020, until COVID fucked us all. Whether you're a motorsport fan or legitimately just a person, COVID fucked us all.
It certainly did.
But it did bring Portimao in Portugal to us. And Portimao may be my favourite racetrack of literally all time, Steve. Whether it's a Formula 1 car, whether it's a MotoGP bike, this is one of the most stunning circuits I've ever seen, and I'm stoked to see it again.
Absolutely, I'm completely with you on that. I've seen racing at Portimao in the past. Never seen a MotoGP bike go around there. But when we did, oh my God, were we in for a treat. Every single fan, I don't think anyone said, oh, I don't like Portimao. You looked anywhere, social media, anything, everyone said, for the love of God, let's go back to Portimao, and we got our wish.
And I don't think that's just MotoGP related. You know full well I'm a massive Formula 1 fan. And the Formula 1 podcast, the Formula 1 fans are also saying the same thing. Let's go back to Portimao. What a track. The elevation change. Just visually, it's a stunning track. It made for great racing. Why are we going to all these flat, boring circuits when we could have a circuit like Portimao?
Exactly. And we're going back. And it's only 3 rounds in. It's going to be hot. It's going to be fantastic. Portugal's a great country. It'll be good for them to have all the pinnacle races go in there. Awesome. And all the fans are so stoked about the race.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we have Portuguese fans that listen to this podcast, don't we? We have Portuguese fans we've spoken to. We have a lot of fans of Miguel Oliveira, who's a Portuguese racer, who are very optimistic about his chances this year. And I hope to God that all of you get to visit this circuit, get to visit this spectacle, because I'm very envious right now. If we were allowed to travel, if European travel is kind of what we kind of hoped it to be, if everything could open up, good Lord, Steve, Portimao would be one of the circuits that I would be dragging your ass to with me.
I don't think you'd have to drag me, my friend. I think I'd run with you willingly.
I'd have to convince Sarah that I was dragging your ass to this track then, Steve.
To be fair, she's pretty damn good. She'd probably tell me to go.
Yeah, that's a fair point. She'd probably back you in dragging me and convincing Cherie that it was all your idea.
Yeah, probably. Drop me right in it.
Yeah, that's fine. So I'm not the one in trouble here.
Yeah, just get me into it. It's fine. I'm completely with you on that one. If for any bizarre reason, before Portimao, we were told that European travel is okay, I'd be there in a heartbeat, mate.
Yeah.
I think we'd be in a very long queue of people looking for tickets. But to be honest with you, I'd just be happy to be around that track on race weekend.
Yeah, quite. I'm with you, my friend. I'm certainly with you. So round 4 would then take us to Jerez, Spain. Now, Jerez has been a track that's been on the calendar for quite a while. I couldn't tell you when it started, but it's within the last 20
Fairly long
years, isn't
time.
it?
It's been on the calendar a long time. I like Jerez, but we've often said, and I think we both agree, if we were going to drop around, it would be one of the Spanish rounds.
One of the Spanish rounds, because Spain has too many rounds in general. Spain has
It
4
does.
rounds a year.
They don't need
Jerez
any
would
more.
not be the Spanish round I'd drop. It would be Valencia. Valencia would be the Spanish round that I would drop. I think Jerez is a fun race, but it's not an Aragon. It's not a Catalonia.
No, definitely not. Which leads us on nicely to the French round at Le Mans.
Which is always a banging race, Steve. It's a great track. There's great elevation change. There's always something exciting that happens at Le Mans, whether it's in MotoGP and it's Danilo Petrucci winning in the wet, or it's an epic crash from a Moto2 title challenger. There's always something fun that happens at a ref, no matter which class you're riding in.
Yeah, there's always drama. Always drama. And then one of my favourite tracks, round 6, Mugello.
It's the kind of track I'd love to go to Mugello, but part of me is a little scared of visiting Mugello.
Oddly, that was in my exact choice of words. I would love to go there, and I've often said it to you in the past. I'd love to drive there, do the drive in the £100 car challenge from the UK, which is just some shit I made up.
That's literally my current car, Steve. So I'm well versed in what a £100 car can do.
Fair enough. I was just going to convert the van out to a little camper, and we could go in that because that thing's shocking.
Your van, mate. We could literally get we could put a couple of beds in there, and that would do the job, mate. Every time.
Whether it would make it or not, I don't know. I'm pretty sure if we made it, some crazy Italian would probably burn it when we got there.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, shadow of that. Look, free space, burn it.
I kind of feel like the Mugello round is a little bit like the Juggalo Festival. Like, it's kind of like this mad thing that is just, if you're involved, happy days. But if you're not involved, you kind of feel a bit confused by what's going on.
Yeah, I always use Mugello as my perfect example of what is synonymous with MotoGP. If I think MotoGP for passion, for absolute purebred fans, it is Mugello. Because I don't think there's another track that we go to that shares that kind of insane atmosphere.
Even Mazzano, which also sort of Italy, but sort of not. Let's not dive into the politics of that. Is not the same level of just insanity, is it?
No, these guys are running around with chainsaw engines with a blade and chain taken off it, just revving them for the fun.
Yeah,
just a bit mental, just a wee bit mental. And I think it's just something that you've got to do as a MotoGP fan once in your life, is visit Mugello on a race weekend and just try and survive.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm sort of feeling that next year or two. I'm thinking a trip to Mugello. But so round 7 takes us to Catalonia, Barcelona, Spain. One of the scene of one of the greatest races of all time, the 2009 Catalonia race. If you haven't seen it, you can literally dive on YouTube. It's a YouTube class. It's a MotoGP classic. You'll find it on YouTube. It's completely free. The race is a fucking stunner, and
It is a hell of a race. Yeah, look it up and watch it several times before you'll have any comprehension of how to understand what the hell you've just watched.
I still watch those final 3 laps even today, and I still get excited. If I watch the faster fastest, the Ewan McGregor narrated film, I watched that intro sequence, which is the Catalonia 2009 race, and my heart rate still picks up. Even now, Steve, my heart rate will pick up when I'm watching it. I know exactly what's going to happen. And for those last 2 laps, my heart is pounding as if, oh my God, this could be different this time. It could be different this time. Of course it's not really different this time. But I still get excited about it. It's one of the greatest final laps of any racing series ever. It's just astonishing.
Watch it, people. you're in for a treat.
So round 8 takes us to Sachsenring, Germany next year. Sachsenring, Germany is just a Honda Marc Marquez dominated track. So if Marc Marquez is back, I am convinced he will win this race. If he's not, well, it could be exciting because there's not a German rider on the grid next year.
No, this is the one where if he does come back and he's builds up to his fitness, this is the one where I tip him at peak or get back full.
Yeah,
he's so good. He's so good at Sachsenring. No one else can really touch him. If he takes a few rounds to warm himself up, if you will, heat his tires up, this is where he is going to announce he's back.
Yeah, you're 100% right. He could come back in round 1 and not win a race until Sachsenring, and then again he could go without winning a race at Aragon 4 rounds later, and it would still be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the one where I'm tipping him to come back to put his stamp on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hadn't thought about it, but now I'm looking at the list. I think you are bang on right. I'm with you completely. Yeah. So round 9 takes us to Assen in the Netherlands. Now, this is one of the finest motorcycle races. Aside from Phillip Island, Assen is the best race every year. And I would be willing to put... I might be wrong, but I would say on average, I'd be willing to put a 5 on Assen being the second best race of every year.
Yeah, people call it the Cathedral of Speed for a reason.
Yes.
It is a thoroughbred racetrack, and it doesn't matter what you watch going round there, it will be a fabulous race.
It will be.
Yeah. MotoGP bikes going around this track look great. It has thrown up some last corner antics, which are just incredible.
And year on year, those last corner antics have happened. It's not just once or twice, it's year on year.
Yeah. You will remember the years where nothing has happened more than you can remember the years where something has happened, because so much happens, it's hard to decipher which year was what.
I remember the year I didn't watch the race, Steve. I listened to the race on just the radio commentary, and I was in Spain. It was 2018. At the time I was walking the Camino de Santiago, and I remember sitting in a hostel, and funny story about this. I'd walked into this hostel, and I'd found that I'd walked in and there was a lot of empty beds, and I'm like, right, I'm going to take this bottom bunk. It's a fucking bottom bunk. Who has left a bottom bunk? What an idiot. I'm taking the bottom bunk. So I jumped on the bottom bunk and I'm laying there and I plugged my headphones in. I'm like, the race is about to start. This is great. And this girl walks in. She's like, why are you in my bed? And I was like, well, this is fucking awkward. I'm going to pretend my music's in so I don't have to listen to her. So I left my headphones in and just ignored her to the world. And then she spouted off to all of her friends how she was very angry at me for taking her bottom bunk. The best bunk in the room, arguably. It was only 4 steps from the toilet, 5 steps from the door. It was a great bunk, to be fair to her. And I'd taken this bunk from her. She'd made it very clear to the world this was her bunk by leaving all of her shit on the top bunk above it.
How does that work?
Quite. I don't really understand either. And clearly none of her friends understood either. And none of the people I was with understood either. So it became this weird clash where none of her friends knew what was going on. None of my friends knew what was going on. I was too busy listening to the race to give a shit what was going on. And she was just raging in the room about it. And in the end, Steve, it all worked out that I got the bed, I got to listen to the race, and she had to deal with the top bunk that she'd left all her shit on. So it was all okay in the end as far as I'm concerned.
So did she sleep above you?
Yes.
I'm surprised she didn't piss on you.
She may have done, but as you can probably tell, Steve, from my current state and my normal state of being, I was a little drunk when I went to sleep that night.
So Tim had no clue.
No, exactly, but it was a banging race. It was actually one of the very few races, as you know, like we recorded podcasts while I was on the Camino. And it was one of the very few races that I listened to, just the audio, and went, I have to go back and listen and actually watch this race.
It's not the same. I've listened to a couple of radio productions, should we say, of the races sort of after they've happened, and it's just not the same. You can't build the atmosphere.
Yeah. Even
if you shut your eyes during the race and just listen to the commentators,
I just fall asleep if I do that.
Yeah.
I've done it before, and I'll do it again. I will just fall. Doesn't matter how into it I am, I will just fall asleep.
I watch it. It has to be watched.
It
is a
does have
spectacle.
to be watched, exactly. So after Assen next year, we have round 10, which is going to be the Kimi Ring in Finland. This is a brand new track, Steve. I don't know what's going to happen. It should have started last year, but due to COVID, it was delayed a year.
Aye.
Let's just fucking see what happens, mate. This could be a fun one.
It could be a fun one. The track looks awesome. Let's get there. Let's get to this 10th round and have a look at it because it looks bloody awesome.
Yep, exactly.
Can't really say a lot else because we haven't been there yet.
That's exactly it, isn't it? And then following that is round 11 at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. It's a Ducati-friendly track. Ducati have won most of the races here, apart from that one that KTM won. You'd be hard-pressed to argue against Ducati winning it again, but we'll see. It could change.
It could throw up a curveball, but yeah, if you're going to put a safe bet, it's okay.
Yeah, I'd say it's a Jack Miller win, but we could be wrong on that.
We could be. And round 12 brings us home to the UK.
Yes, it does, my friend. It brings us to Silverstone. I don't have much to say about this. It's a different winner every fucking year. It's great.
It is. It's a longest track on the calendar.
And one of the fastest average lap times on the calendar as well.
Yes, it's a high-speed track. I've been. It is fabulous if you get the chance. Go. Anyone. It's Silverstone. It's the pinnacle of racing tracks in the UK. Come and have a look.
Without a doubt, is the best racing circuit in the UK. I've never seen motorbikes go around there. I've seen Formula One cars go around there. And it's an incredible. It's just an incredible circuit, and it's so flat. That's the nice thing about it. And also
flat.
The nice thing when you're there is that it's flat as fuck, and you can see everything. On TV, that kind of ruins it because you can see everything. The fun thing on TV is the elevation change, but when you're actually at a track, it being flat as fuck is nice. But it's an old RAF base or an Air Force base. It's flat. It's so flat, and it covers 4 counties or something.
It's a weird thing that if you map out the actual boundary of the track itself, it covers 4 counties of the UK.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things as well, whereas it can quite comfortably be raining in 3 corners and be bright sunshine in the other 12 corners.
Yeah, we were really lucky when we went. We met some people that have been every year, and we picked a 1 year it didn't rain. Top tip: if you camp, don't forget your tickets. Walk to the track because they won't let you in, and it's a fucking long walk.
It's gonna be a long walk, man. You and I have camped at fucking Snetterton, and that would be a long walk, and arguably a quote-unquote long walk from the Snetterton gate to the campsite, but that's gonna be maybe 12% of the walk, as it's gonna be from the Silverstone gate to the campsite.
We left the tent, we got to the gate, and there's you've got to have your tickets just to get in to the track. Despite the fact you're already in there, you've got to have your tickets to get in. Anyway, we got to the gate. Bouncer stood there, or the guard stood there. Tickets. I looked at Sarah. She looked at me. And then it was that point I realised they were sat on the dashboard of the car.
Oh, that's so infuriating.
They did have the tractor taxis. Typical England countryside tractor taxis.
Yeah.
So we got one of them back.
Oh, mate, I'd have been raging with you. If I was Sarah at that point, I'd have been so angry with you.
We were both angry at each other.
Angry at each other. Yeah, that's fair enough. So moving on from Silverstone and the marital disputes that it causes, we join Aragon in Spain. Aragon, great track, fun to look at, visually stunning, and usually provides a good race. So
it does.
We can look forward to that.
Racing. But yeah, it's probably one of the best looking racetracks on the grid.
Yeah, certainly that wall. It's just that wall, isn't it, that does it?
That's that extreme elevation change. They come around a corner and there's just this monster wall. You're like, what the fuck? Who put that up?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just cracking. Watch it. Great race.
That's exactly it. And then following that, we have Misano in San Marino, which isn't really Italy, but sort of is, but sort of isn't. Let's not get into the politics of that right now. But this would be the home track for Valentino Rossi. It'd be the home track for Franco Morbidelli. There's a lot of guys that this is their home track for. It's a popular track. It's a fun circuit. It's always a good race.
It is. Yeah, San Marino is a nice track. Another one on my bucket list to go to.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on from that, we have Motegi Japan. Motegi. This is often a great race. It's one of the few figure of 8 tracks on the MotoGP circuit. And that's because, due to a bridge. It's not because they cross paths at some weird point, because that would be a bit mental. But it's a fun track. It creates some great racing. In the rain, we saw a great Dovi versus Marquez race here. Was it 18?
Did we just?
2017?
Yeah, that was 2017, I believe, top of my head.
And that was a really fun race. It's a really, really great track. And then we moved to Buriram, Thailand. We've only seen one race in Thailand, and that was 2019. We should have seen one in 2020, but COVID standard at this point, in it. And that will be a fun race again. It was a fun race the first time. Round 17, though, this is the important one, and arguably my favourite race of the year, every single year. And it's Phillip Island in Australia. Best race of the year, best circuit. And the circuit it's undulating, it's fast, it's high corner speed, and it's windy. I think it's a combination of the and cold. But it's not just cold, is it? It's that there could be one or two cold corners. The rest could be fine. It's just
such a bizarre track.
Yes, and it's the perfect track in the perfect location, and arguably, I think Phillip Island could be the greatest racetrack in the world.
I think you're probably right. There's no other racetrack that goes through as many elevations look at Lukey Heights.
The whole thing, man. And it's one of those points where, Cherie will say to me, "How was the race?" And I'll be like, "Oh yeah, it was good." She'll be like, "Good?" I'll be like. And this is how I describe most races to Cherie when she asks, because so Cherie, my other half, she does not give a shit about motorcycle racing whatsoever. She's literally does not care whatsoever. But she'll ask me to humour me. So she'll say to me, and this is coming to Phillip Island, "How was the race?" "Oh, it was good." Just good? "Yeah, just good." "But it was Phillip Island." I'm like, yes. So Phillip Island, I always expect to be amazing. I always expect it to be amazing. But if I say Phillip Island is good, that still means it's the best race of the year. But it's just not as good as I expect Phillip Island to be. Phillip Island just creates the best racing.
Yeah. It's chucked up some insane races over the year, with some insane situations chucked in. Throw a few seagulls in the mix and Iannone, and you've got a headbutt.
2015 Phillip Island is the greatest Formula 1 race. Formula 1. 2015 Phillip Island is the greatest MotoGP race I've ever watched live, and I don't think that's ever going to change. I think it was just the best race at the best time of my life. It was just, everything about it was perfect. The season was perfect. That point in my life was perfect. The racetrack is perfect. The race itself was perfect. Everything combined to just be... I cannot imagine a race better than Phillip Island 2015.
I have to see what this year throws up, mate.
I'm still not convinced, man. The Phillip Island in 2021, the only way it can possibly be better if it's still a 4-5-way battle for the championship.
You might get your wish if it was like last year.
Well, I'll give you that, and it could be fucking great. I'm not convinced, but it could be, Steve, and I'm holding out fucking hope, because this year's gonna be great.
It is. It shall be great.
So, not 2018 at all. That was 3 years ago. Round 18 of MotoGP 2021 will take us to Sepang in Malaysia. Now, this is a track that was very heavily used for Formula 1 up until very recently, where they went, "Do you know what? Fuck Formula 1, it's too expensive. Let's just focus on MotoGP." Razdan Razali, who is the now the team principal of the Sepang racing team Petronas Yamaha squad, was once the chairman of the Sepang Malaysia circuit, so he kind of knows his shit. This circuit has a very vested interest in MotoGP, and actually has created some great MotoGP racing in the past. Do you remember Dovi, it would have been 2018, the Dovi Lorenzo, oh my god, is he going to obey team orders, is he not? Was it engine map 18 or something?
Oh, something like that. Well, the weird code, basically, Race Direction can put out, or teams can put out weird codes to the dashboard on the bike, which the riders could get. So so can the Race Direction. So if they're going to get a ride-through penalty, they will get a ride-through penalty, stick a flag up on their dashboard. But the team can also put out instructions to the rider. So often we've seen a code and it's often engine mapping. And we'll see engine mapping 18, which in this scenario was Lorenzo was in front of Dovi, and he was asked before the race, if Dovi's behind you, will you go team orders and get out of his way? And he gave a cryptic no.
Yeah, that's essentially what he said, wasn't it?
Yeah, essentially he said no. What was it, 2 laps before the end, 3 laps before the end?
No, it was on most of the race, man. He only fucked it. So it was, I think it was
wide,
maybe 8 or 9 laps before the end. He was getting like engine map 8 or whatever it was. I think it was 8, wasn't it? Engine map 8?
Something anyway, engine map something.
Yeah.
Which was basically Ducati's way of saying, let him pass.
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of the way. And Lorenzo just completely ignored this until he ran wide. Was it on the last lap or the second to last lap?
Yeah, and it was only because he ran wide that Dovi took the lead. If he hadn't have run wide, I don't think he'd have given it up. But then afterwards, he was like, oh, I gave it up because they asked me to.
Yeah, I ran wide and did it. No, you didn't. You stuck in front of him. But then knowing what Lorenzo was like, he would have said, well, I was faster than you. I was towing you up to him.
Yeah, quite.
Sepang does throw up some awesome races.
Yeah, 100%.
And that leads us nicely onto round 19, which is the same racetrack every year, our season-ending track at Valencia in Spain.
Yeah, our season finale is Valencia, isn't it? Every single year, depressingly, because I actually think this is a shit track, and I don't think it should be there. I think there's too many Spanish tracks as it is. I think scrap Valencia. Let's have Phillip Island as the final round of the year. But that's just me.
Valencia does throw up some good racing, but
it's shit. It's a shit track.
It is. It doesn't throw up the type of racing that we could get elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you say, of those 4 Spanish rounds, Valencia is the worst.
Yeah.
So if you look at it in that poll, let's drop Valencia. Let's put something else in. We've seen other racetracks biting to get on the calendar. Let's give something else a go.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Spain have got enough circuits, if you ask me.
They're just being greedy.
At this point, there's 4 Spanish circuits over a 19 race season. Like they've got a decent chunk. That's enough. Let's find something else. But we do have postponed this year. There's the Texas and Argentina rounds. Both of them should be earlier on in the year. It should be Qatar, Texas, Argentina, or Qatar, Argentina, Texas. And Texas is a great fucking track, and so is Argentina. To be fair, they both throw up good racing. They both throw up great tracks. But this year, due to COVID, we won't be going there.
No,
they're officially postponed. I'm sure they'll be cancelled soon enough.
Yeah. I can't see us going there at all this year. Not with the logistics it would cause to then move. Too much of a headache.
Yeah.
So we will see. Hopefully, if things are back to normal next year, we'll have a full calendar in the right order, and anyone new to watch MotoGP will get to appreciate the spectacle, which is the Bullhorn Trophy from Texas.
Oh, it's a good one, though, isn't it? It's a good one. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's just like Boss Hogg. Someone had just nicked his bumper sticker.
That's exactly it. So, Steve, we've covered most of I feel like we've covered most of MotoGP. I think we've covered everything we need to. There's a few FAQs I'd like to go through, though, which I know people are asking about the track, Steve. So I'm just going to fire these out. They're just very quick fire answers before we end the show. It's been a fucking monstrous show, actually, when I'm looking at the timings here.
It's a huge show.
So let's just go quick. How do MotoGP riders train? Fire away, answer the question for me.
Lots of cardio, cycling, and motocross training.
That sort of covers it nicely. Okay, brilliant. How do you start a MotoGP bike?
A rolling starter. There's 2 ways. Basically, you can roll the bike backwards onto a floor-mounted rolling starter, or the new way, which is a lot of bikes doing now, is a handheld starting device which plugs into the crank on the side of the bike, press the button, whiz, bang, boom.
Arguably, it's just a jump start, though, isn't it? Or bump start, sorry.
Bump start, yeah, essentially. There's no electric starter. You don't push a button, whiz, bang. This has to be bump started.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So are MotoGP and F1 tracks the same?
Some are, some aren't.
Nice and easy, yes, arguably some are. So they do share a few tracks, but they also separate on a few tracks. Simple as that, really. Are MotoGP bikes road legal?
Bloody wish. No.
No, plain and simple. Can you buy a MotoGP bike?
No.
Well, arguably yes. If
Well,
you've got a load of money, you could have bought a KTM from last year. Like
you
they
can,
do
yeah, some go up for
occasionally put
auction.
them up for sale.
Oh, that is very true. I didn't think of that one. Yeah, some slip through the net and do end up on auction sites, which would be. Imagine having one of those in your house. I just polish it.
Well, I mean, arguably, you and I and anyone listening to this show cannot afford one of those. So, for all intents and purposes, you are correct with the no.
They're pricey.
Our MotoGP, I'm losing my words, Steve. I've had too many drinks, and it's just getting to me now. We're so close to the end of the show. I'm going to have to commit. So,
well, here you go. Look, I'll fire them at you.
Go on, fire them at me.
Are MotoGP bikes automatic?
No, they use what is almost a semi-automatic box, don't they? It's the what's the name of the gearbox?
Seamless shift.
Seamless shift gearbox. That's it. They don't need a clutch. They can change up and change down because there's almost 3 gears engaged at all times. It's a very complicated gearbox. I've read into it a few times, but it's worth a Wikipedia hole.
Piece of kit.
Yeah.
Press the button. Click it up and it will seamlessly change within half a second.
And if you don't have a seamless gearbox, you are going to be losing half a second a lap.
Yeah, this is how technical. Oh, you know what I mean. Sorry, it's late.
See, mate, I'm the one that's drinking. You've not even had a drink tonight. I may be 6 beers and a vodka in, and you are the one that's tripping on your words here.
That's too much juice.
Mental stuff, mate. Too much Robinsons.
You do not want the Robinsons. Right. Are MotoGP bikes faster than superbikes?
Yes, and they would be even faster if superbike electronics were not more sophisticated than MotoGP electronics. If we were given all of the money in the world, then MotoGP bikes would be 3, 4, maybe 5 seconds a lap faster than superbikes. As it is, because of the electronics in superbikes, being more sophisticated, they can stick within 2 or 3 seconds a lap of MotoGP bikes.
Nice. Are MotoGP bikes faster than Formula 1 cars?
No, in very few scenarios will they be faster around a lap. In a straight line, arguably something like a Ducati will be faster than a Formula 1 car, but they will lose 20 to 30% of the speed against Formula 1 cars in the corners. And sadly, most tracks are made up of more corners than of straights. So over a lap, a Formula 1 car will be way, way faster than a MotoGP bike. I think if you were to look at a Silverstone lap time, for example, a Formula 1 car would do that 20 to 30 seconds faster than a MotoGP bike.
Yeah. And lastly, where can you watch MotoGP?
Well, this is the place. So it depends what country you're in. You can watch BT Sport in the UK. I'm not sure what it's displayed on in the US, but or the rest of the world. But generally, if you don't know whether you can get MotoGP in a domestic channel or in a package you're already paying for, then there is always the option of the video pass, which is 200 and something euros a year. It's pretty pricey. I'd love to tell you we had an affiliate for that so we could make some money off you purchasing that, but sadly we do not. So just if you want to watch it, then and you can't find it on a domestic channel, then Video Pass is the one for you. The Video Pass commentators, although a bit boring, are pretty bang on. They're much better. I say they're boring, but part of that is because they stay sober, so they would be much better at this job than I would be. They are good. The information is very, very good. The
information is good.
The information is good. All of the imagery you get is very, very good, and it would be.
Yeah.
If you're in the UK though, BT Sport is the one, I think. Although it will be different this year without Keith Ewan, so we'll see what happens this year. But I'm convinced that the BT Sport in the UK is the best way to watch it. And to be fair, guys, if you have a VPN, just get BT Sport and do it on your VPN. That's my suggestion, but don't let that get out into the public world. Don't tell MotoGP I told you that. And I think that brings us to the end, man.
That is the end of the show.
We do have a few resources extra if you want to watch, if you want to kind of get to grips with what's going on MotoGP. I would say I've listed a few here, Steve, but please tell me if you have any others. When it comes to film, Faster, Fastest, both narrated by Ewan McGregor, and then Hitting the Apex, narrated by Brad Pitt. They are the best Formula One films. There's also a couple of earlier films narrated by Ewan McGregor that are very good. What?
You said Formula One.
I'm getting very confused. I've had too many drinks at this point. They're the best MotoGP films are Faster, Fastest, and Hitting the Apex. Certainly worth a watch. As far as websites go, there's MotoGP.com is great. The-race.com is very good. We had Simon Patterson on an earlier episode. You can go back and look for that if you want. That's in our feed. Moto Matters is very good, and GP1 are an interesting site. The information they give is very on point, although not always accurate. However, they are full-on MotoGP journalists, whereas Steve and I are literally just fans. So they're probably more in the know than us. However, I would not trust what they tell you 100% of the time. Same with something like Autosport. Don't trust what they're telling you all the time because it's not always going to be correct. Or you could come with us and join our Facebook group, guys. We have a Facebook group, and it's just under For the Love of MotoGP. You can find us on there, answer the questions, join the group, and come and get stuck in with chatting MotoGP.
Involved.
Exactly, and it's not just MotoGP. We talk motorbikes. There's memes being thrown around, and actually, we literally discussed this same option in the show that came out 3 or 4 days ago, but we're going to throw it away again now because we're recording on the same night here. And Steve's been treating us to his Monday moans.
I like a good Monday moan.
A good Monday moan is fun, Steve. This week's Monday moan, which we won't dive into it too deeply. We dived into the last episode, but it was about the Repsol Honda liveries. And the fact they've just not really changed much recently. They are pretty boring.
They are. They don't really change it. There's not much thought. But, come and join the group and I'll treat you to another Monday moan.
Every week there's a Monday moan.
Every single week you'll get one. And you might even get a little quiz on the Tuesday.
Oh, yep. The Tuesday trivias, they've become a thing too. So there's plenty going on, guys. So come and join us in the Facebook group. Come. It's as simple as just searching for Love of MotoGP. Like the page. Come and join the group. Answer the questions. We'll let you in. And then we're good to go from there.
Have a chat.
If there's any of you that want to get us hold of us in another way, if you're anti-Facebook, that's fair enough, guys. I'm very pro the anti-Mark Zuckerberg crowd. However, I'm also on board with the Mark Zuckerberg crowd because, I'm a bit of a hypocrite. But I'm willing to admit that, and I'm happy with that.
So that's all fine.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to admit my flaws. My flaws is I'm a Zuckerberg hypocrite. But for those of you who do want to get hold of us in another way, you can find us on...
We are For the Love of MotoGP. You can come and find us on Instagram and Twitter, or drop us an email. We are fortheloveofmotogp@gmail.com.
And that's it, guys. Thank you very, very much for listening. This has been a fucking mammoth show. You've put up with our tangents. You've put up with my drunken swearing. You've put up with all of the usual bollocks, guys. And I really, really appreciate that. So stick with us through 2021, guys. We'll bring you weekly shows as the year goes on. It will be about the races. It will be about the non-races. We'll bring you the news. We'll bring you the non-news. There's probably weeks where I will just get more drunk than I am now, and Steve will have to save the day and bring the podcast back on point, and that is just going to happen. We just accept that as part of the... I cannot even speak now. That's how drunk I've just got. So that's just
that vodka just kicked right in.
It just kicked me in the arse, my friend, straight away. Just boom, there's the vodka. But it's just part of the for the love... See, I can't do it. For the love of MotoGP brand. That's all it is, guys. It's part of the fun. So stick with us. Join us. We love having you here. Come and join the Facebook group. Have a chat with us. It's fucking wonderful, my friends. Stay with us. We will speak to you all very, very soon. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Music is by Andrew Greenwood. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.